Hey, tonight we're going to journey back to medieval Europe, where we'll experience life through the eyes of a serf, one of the countless men and women who worked the land in the shadow of castles and manors. I promise you'll never look at your comfortable bed or refrigerator the same way again. Hey, if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. I'm curious where you're listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Now, find a cozy spot. Take a slow, deep breath and let your body sink into comfort as we journey back in time together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in medieval Europe, somewhere in England around the year 1250. The first thing you notice is the cold. Not just any cold, but a bone-deep, inescapable chill that has settled into your muscles overnight. Your back aches from sleeping on a thin straw mattress laid directly on the packed earth floor. There's no pillow. Your family can't afford such luxuries. Just a small log tucked under a folded piece of cloth to support your neck. You blink awake in near darkness, the only light coming from the dying embers of last night's fire in the centre of your one-room cottage. The smoke has mostly escaped through the hole in the thatched roof above, but some still lingers, making your eyes water slightly. You're not alone on your sleeping pallet. Your two younger brothers are curled against you for warmth, and across the room your parents and baby sister share another straw mattress. The smell hits you next, a mixture of wood smoke, unwashed bodies, the earthiness of the straw beneath you, and the distinct odour of the family pig that's taken shelter in the corner of your home for the night. In winter, animals often share your living space. Their body heat is too valuable to waste in separate shelters, and they're too precious to risk losing to wolves or thieves. Your name is Thomas, and you're 14 years old. In this time, that makes you almost a man. You've been working alongside your father in the fields since you were strong enough to handle tools around age 7. Your family are serfs bound to the manor of Lord Geoffrey, whose stone keep you can see on the hill overlooking your village of 30-odd households. The weight of a hand on your shoulder makes you stir. It's your father, already up and moving in the dim light. "Time to rise, Thomas," he whispers, his voice rough from sleep. The plough awaits no man. You feel the heaviness of sleep pulling at you, but there's no choice. The work of survival waits for no one, and spring ploughing has begun. You sit up, your rough woolen tunic scratching against your skin as you move. It's the same garment you wore yesterday and will wear tomorrow. You own only 2 sets of clothes, and the better one is saved for church and special occasions. Your mother is already stoking the fire, blowing gently on the embers until small flames begin to lick at the fresh kindling she's added. She reaches for the iron pot hanging from a hook near the fire and ladles what looks like a thin porridge into wooden bowls. This is your breakfast. A simple mixture of oats boiled in water with perhaps a bit of salt if you're lucky. On special days there might be a dollop of honey, but not today. Today is just an ordinary day in the endless cycle of planting, growing and harvesting that defines your existence. "Eat quickly," your father says, already spooning his portion into his mouth. "Lord Geoffrey's steward will be watching to make sure we're in the fields at first light." As a serf, your family doesn't own the land you live on, or even, in many ways, your own labour. You're bound to Lord Geoffrey's manor, required to work his fields for 3 days each week without pay. The rest of the time, you can work your own small strips of land, about 10 acres, allocated to your family, but even then, you must give a portion of whatever you grow to the Lord as rent. The porridge sits heavy in your stomach as you finish eating. Your mother hands you a small cloth bundle, a piece of coarse bread and a bit of hard cheese that will serve as your midday meal. You tuck it into the small pouch tied at your waist. Outside, the air is sharp with early spring cold, but at least the rain has stopped. The ground beneath your feet is a muddy mess, and you're thankful for your leather shoes, crude as they are. Many peasants go barefoot much of the year, but your father is skilled at leatherworking, which he does during the winter months when field work is impossible. Your family isn't wealthy by any means, but you're not among the poorest in the village either. The eastern sky is just beginning to lighten as you and your father make your way to the village common where other men and boys are gathering. There's little talk. Everyone is still half asleep and saving their energy for the long day ahead. The Lord's steward, a stern man named Walter, is already there, counting heads and making notes on a piece of parchment. "You'll be ploughing the north field today," Walter announces to the assembled men. "The oxen are already yoked, 6 teams, and I want clean furrows." Your father is selected to lead one of the ploughing teams, with you as his assistant. It's hard work, guiding the heavy wooden plough behind a team of oxen. The implement has an iron cutting edge that slices into the soil, while a wooden mouldboard turns the earth over to expose fresh soil for planting. Without this step, crops would struggle in the depleted topsoil. The plough feels impossibly heavy against your hands. The wooden handles press into your palms until they're raw and aching. Behind you, other men follow with hoes and rakes breaking up clods of earth. Women and girls from the village will come later to scatter seeds in the freshly turned soil. Your shoulders burn with the effort of keeping the plough straight. One of the oxen is being stubborn, constantly pulling to the left, which means you and your father must use extra strength to maintain the furrow's line. Sweat begins to soak through your tunic, despite the cool morning air. "Keep it straight, Thomas," your father murmurs. "Remember what I taught you. Feel the earth through the plough." You adjust your grip, leaning your weight into the task. The rich smell of fresh earth fills your nostrils as the plough turns over the soil. There's something satisfying about it, watching the neat furrow form behind you, knowing that soon this field will be green with growing wheat or rye, the staff of life that keeps hunger at bay. The sun climbs higher, and your back aches with a deep, persistent pain. Your hands have formed blisters that have broken and now bleed slightly, making the wooden plough handles slippery, but you dare not stop. The steward watches from his horse at the edge of the field, and any sign of slacking would be reported to Lord Geoffrey. When the sun reaches its highest point, there's a brief rest. You sink down onto the ground, your legs trembling with fatigue. Your father sits beside you, his face weathered and lined beyond his 35 years. He looks old to your eyes, though in truth, he's still strong. Many men don't live much past 40 in your time. You unwrap your small bundle of food and break the bread in half, offering a portion to your father. He takes it with a nod of thanks. The cheese is hard and a bit mouldy at the edges, but neither of you minds. Food is food, and you've both worked up a fierce hunger. "The soil looks good this year," your father says between bites. "If the weather holds, we might have a better harvest than last." Last year's harvest had been poor and the winter hard. There had been nights when you'd gone to bed with your stomach aching from emptiness, your mother insisting that the younger children needed what little food remained more than you did. You hope your father is right about this year's prospects. The rest period is brief, no more than the time it takes to eat your simple meal and give the oxen a chance to drink from a nearby stream. Then it's back to the plough, your muscles protesting as you once again take up your position. The afternoon wears on, the sun beating down on your back. The field seems endless, though you know it's only a few acres. By the time the steward calls an end to the day's work, the sun is low in the western sky, and you've been labouring for more than 12 hours. Every part of your body aches as you and your father lead the oxen back to their pen. Your hands are raw, your shoulders burn, and your lower back feels as though someone has taken a club to it. But the north field is ploughed, its earth ready to receive the seed that will, God willing, grow into the grain that will see the manor through another year. The walk home seems longer than it did this morning. Your father is silent beside you, conserving his energy. When you reach your cottage, your mother has a pot of pottage simmering over the fire, a thick stew of whatever vegetables could be found this early in the season, mostly cabbage and turnips, with a few dried beans added for substance. On truly special occasions, there might be a bit of salt pork or bacon to flavour it, but meat is a rarity on your table. Your younger brothers, aged 10 and 7, have spent their day helping your mother and gathering firewood. Your sister, just 2, toddles around the dirt floor, occasionally steadying herself against the rough wooden table that, along with a few stools, makes up most of your family's furniture. "How was the field?" your mother asks, ladling the steaming pottage into wooden bowls. "Good soil," your father replies. "Thomas handled the plough well today." The simple praise warms you more than the food. Your father is not a man of many words, and his approval means everything. After the meal, there's still work to be done. The pig needs feeding, water must be fetched from the village well, and tools prepared for tomorrow. By the time you finally stretch out on your straw mattress, the only light is again from the fire's embers. Your body throbs with exhaustion, but there's also a sense of satisfaction. You've done your duty today, contributed to your family's survival, and fulfilled your obligation to the manor. As sleep begins to claim you, you're vaguely aware of your brothers curling up beside you, their small bodies seeking warmth against the night's chill. Tomorrow will bring another day of labour, almost identical to this one, and the day after that, and the one after that. This is the rhythm of life as a serf. The endless cycle of seasons, of planting and harvesting, of owing your labour to the land and to your lord. You drift off, your dreams filled with the smell of fresh-turned earth and the hope of a bountiful harvest to come. Morning arrives all too soon, the pale light filtering through the small window openings in your cottage walls. These aren't proper windows with glass, just narrow openings that can be covered with wooden shutters in bad weather. Today, like yesterday, begins before dawn. But this morning is slightly different. It's Sunday, the Lord's Day, and while there will still be work to do, animals need tending regardless of the day. You won't be in the fields. Instead, you'll attend Mass at the village church, a small stone building that sits at the centre of your community. Your mother has been up earlier than usual, preparing special bread for after church. The smell of it baking on the hot stones near the fire makes your stomach growl appreciatively. Sunday bread is made with finer flour than your daily fare, and sometimes even has a bit of honey mixed in. Your father helps your younger brothers wash their faces and hands in a basin of water. Appearance matters on Sundays, when the whole village gathers together and Lord Geoffrey himself might be present with his family. You take your turn at the basin, scrubbing away the dirt as best you can. Your mother has laid out your better tunic, still rough wool but less patched and stained than your everyday garment. The church bell begins to toll, its sound carrying across the village. Your family joins the stream of people making their way to the small stone building. Inside, the church is cool and dim, with light filtering through small, high windows. The walls are painted with bright scenes from the Bible, helping to tell the stories to those who cannot read, which is almost everyone in the village, including your family. The priest, Father Matthew, is a stern but fair man who serves not only as the village's religious leader, but also as something of a record keeper and advisor. He's one of the few literate people in your community, along with Lord Geoffrey and his family, and the steward Walter. The Mass is conducted in Latin, which you don't understand, but the familiar rhythm of the service is comforting. You kneel on the hard stone floor, the cold seeping through your clothes and into your knees. Around you, the village smells different than usual. People have made an effort to wash, and some of the women have tucked sweet herbs into their clothing to provide a pleasant scent. After Mass, there's a brief period of community gathering. This is when announcements are made, news is shared, and sometimes disputes are settled. Today, Father Matthew reminds everyone that Easter is approaching and extra work will be needed to prepare the church. He also announces that 2 new babies were born in the past week, both healthy, thanks be to God, and leads a prayer for a good harvest. As your family walks home, you notice your father deep in conversation with a neighbour, their heads bent close together. "What's the matter?" you ask when you catch up to them. Your father's face is grim. William says Lord Geoffrey is planning to clear the western woodland for a new field. That's where we gather most of our firewood and forage for nuts in the fall. This is troubling news. While the Lord has every right to clear his lands, the loss of the woodland would be a serious blow to the village. Wild foods gathered from the forest, nuts, berries, mushrooms, and occasionally game, form an important supplement to your diet, especially in lean years. Can anything be done, you ask, already knowing the answer? Your father shakes his head. The land is his to use as he sees fit. We'll have to travel farther to gather what we need, that's all. It's a stark reminder of your place in the world. As serfs, you have certain rights and protections under custom and law, but ultimately the land belongs to the Lord, and his decisions can dramatically impact your life with little recourse on your part. Sunday afternoon brings a rare opportunity for rest and social gathering. The young men of the village organise a game of ball in the common field, a rough affair with few rules beyond getting a stuffed leather ball from one end of the field to the other. It's a chance to burn off energy and engage in friendly competition. You join in eagerly, your body temporarily forgetting its aches from yesterday's labour. The older men gather to discuss village matters and share a communal jug of ale, while women catch up on news and children run wild in a rare moment of freedom. These Sunday afternoons are precious breaks in the endless cycle of work. As the sun begins to lower, families drift back to their homes. There's still the evening milking to be done for those fortunate enough to own a cow, animals to feed, and preparations to make for the week ahead. Your mother sets you to chopping vegetables for tomorrow's pottage, while she mends a tear in your father's tunic. "Thomas," she says as you work side by side, "Mrs. Cooper mentioned that her daughter Emma has been asking about you." You feel your face grow warm. Emma Cooper is a year younger than you, with bright eyes and a quick laugh. You've noticed her too, though you've been too shy to say much to her directly. She's a good girl from a good family, your mother continues, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. Her father is a free tenant, not bound to the manor like us. She'd make a fine wife someday. "Mother," you protest, embarrassed. "I'm only 14. "And in a few years you'll be looking to start your own household," she says matter-of-factly. "It's not too early to think about these things." Marriage isn't just about love in your world. It's a practical arrangement that brings together resources and labour. A good match can improve your family's standing and security, and your mother is right that the Coopers would be a good connection. As free tenants, they pay rent for their land, but aren't bound to it as serfs are. Their daughter would bring a small dowry and valuable skills in spinning and weaving. Before you can respond further, your father enters the cottage, bringing with him news from the men's gathering. The bailiff says we'll be planting the east field with barley this year instead of rye, he announces. Lord Geoffrey wants more barley for brewing ale. This news is met with mixed feelings. Barley requires more careful tending than the hardier rye, but it also fetches a better price at market. If the harvest is good, the portion your family keeps might bring in more income when sold. That night, as you lie on your straw mattress listening to the soft breathing of your brothers, your mind is full of the day's events, the hard reality of the Lord's decision about the woodland, the game of ball that left you pleasantly tired, your mother's hints about Emma Cooper, and the news about the barley planting. All of these things form the texture of your life, a life bound to the land and to the traditions and obligations of feudal society. You drift off to sleep with the comforting warmth of your brothers beside you, the familiar smell of wood smoke in your nostrils, and the knowledge that tomorrow will bring another day of labour under the spring sun. Your hands still bear the blisters from yesterday's ploughing, but they're already toughening into calluses, the badge of honour for a working man in your world. Dawn comes early, and with it, the beginning of another week of work. Monday is traditionally wash day, and while your mother and sister take charge of that task, you and your father have been assigned by the steward to repair a section of fence that marks the boundary between two of Lord Geoffrey's fields. The work is less strenuous than ploughing, but requires careful attention. The fence posts must be firmly set in the ground, and the rails secured properly to prevent livestock from pushing through. You work methodically, digging holes for new posts where the old ones have rotted, while your father splits new rails from logs using an axe and wooden wedges. The day passes in steady labour, broken only by a brief rest to eat your midday meal. Again, bread and cheese, though the bread is the special Sunday loaf your mother made yesterday, now a day old, but still a treat compared to your usual fare. As you work, you notice dark clouds gathering on the horizon. Spring weather is notoriously changeable, and a sudden storm could make the remainder of your task miserable. "We should hurry," your father says, also eyeing the sky. "That rain will be here before evening." You redouble your efforts, your hands moving faster as you secure the last of the new rails. The first fat drops of rain begin to fall just as you gather your tools. By the time you reach your cottage, the sky has opened up completely, and you're both soaked to the skin. Your mother clucks sympathetically as you enter, immediately stirring the fire to provide warmth. Your wet clothes are hung near the flames to dry, and you change into your other set of garments, grateful that today was washing day so they're relatively clean. The rain drums on your thatched roof, finding a few spots where the straw has thinned, creating small drips that your mother catches in bowls. The leak spots are well known to your family, and repairing the thatch is a task scheduled for later in the spring when there's a brief lull in fieldwork. The rain is good for the newly planted fields, your father observes, always thinking of the crops. A farmer's mind is constantly attuned to the weather and its effects on growing things. The evening meal is the usual pottage, but tonight there's a surprise. Your mother has added a few precious bits of bacon saved from the pig your family slaughtered at Martinmas last November. The smoky flavour transforms the simple stew into something truly satisfying. Even your youngest brother, usually a picky eater, cleans his bowl and looks hopefully for more. As the family gathers around the fire for the evening, your father begins working on a new pair of shoes for your youngest brother, who has outgrown his current ones. The leather was tanned last fall, a smelly process that took weeks but transformed raw hides into usable material. Your father's fingers move deftly, using a bone awl to punch holes through which he passes waxed thread, gradually shaping the flat leather into foot coverings. Your mother takes up her drop spindle, turning wool from your family's few sheep into thread that will later be woven into cloth. Your task for the evening is to carve a new handle for the hoe that broke last week. The wood must be shaped just right to fit the iron blade securely, while providing a comfortable grip for the user. These quiet evening hours, when the day's heavy labour is done but there's still light from the fire for indoor tasks, are when skills are passed down and stories are told. Tonight your father recounts a tale from his own youth when a particularly harsh winter froze the village pond, solid enough to walk across. "We made sleds from barrel staves," he tells your rapt brothers, "and raced them across the ice. Your Uncle Robert was the fastest. He always won." Uncle Robert, your father's brother, died 3 winters ago from a lung sickness that swept through the village. Such losses are common in your world, where illness can take even the strongest with frightening speed. There are no doctors in your village, only the wise woman at the edge of the settlement who knows about herbs and poultices, and whose remedies sometimes help and sometimes don't. The rain continues through the night, and you fall asleep to its steady patter on the thatch above. Your dreams are filled with the smell of fresh-turned earth and the sound of water bringing life to seeds nestled in the soil. Morning brings clearing skies, but mud everywhere. The village pathways have turned into streams of brown sludge that suck at your shoes as you make your way to the manor's barn, where today's work assignment will be distributed. The wet conditions mean that field work is impossible. Ploughing or planting in mud would only damage both the tools and the soil structure. Instead, the steward assigns indoor tasks. You and several other young men are directed to the manor's granary, where sacks of grain saved from last year's harvest need to be turned to prevent spoilage. It's dusty, monotonous work, moving heavy sacks from one side of the storehouse to the other, but at least you're out of the mud. The granary is dark and cool, with small, high windows that let in minimal light. The smell of stored grain fills your nostrils. Not unpleasant, but distinct. Rats are a constant problem in such places, and several cats prowl the perimeter, their eyes gleaming in the shadows as they hunt for rodents. As you work, you overhear two older men discussing the upcoming Easter celebrations. Easter is one of the most important festivals of the year, marking not only a religious observance, but also the true beginning of spring. After the long Lenten fast, when meat, eggs and dairy are forbidden, Easter brings a welcome return to more varied and satisfying meals. "My wife's been saving eggs for weeks," one man says. "We'll have a proper feast if the weather holds for the fair." The Easter Fair is an annual event held on the manor grounds where peddlers and merchants from nearby towns set up stalls to sell goods not available in your village: spices, fine cloth, metal tools, and other luxuries. For most villagers, it's a rare opportunity to purchase something special, provided they've managed to save enough coin through the year. You've been looking forward to the fair yourself. Last harvest, you earned a few extra pennies helping the miller's family bring in their wheat. You've kept the coins carefully wrapped in a scrap of cloth, hidden beneath a loose board in your cottage. You're hoping to buy a small belt knife of your own, a practical tool that would also be something of a status symbol for a young man your age. The workday in the granary passes slowly, the repetitive task of moving sacks numbing both body and mind. By the end, your shoulders and back ache from the strain, and your lungs feel dusty from the grain particles floating in the air, but it's still better than being soaked through in the fields. When you return home that evening, you find your mother in an unusually cheerful mood. She's been to the woods today, taking advantage of a break in the rain, and has returned with a bounty of early spring greens, tender dandelion leaves, wild garlic, and even a few precious morels, mushrooms that appear briefly in spring and are prized for their flavour. "We'll have a proper stew tonight," she announces proudly, already chopping the foraged goods to add to the pot. The addition of these wild foods will transform your usual pottage into something special, a welcome change after the monotonous winter diet. As you sit down to enjoy this improved meal, your father shares news he heard while working today. "There's word that Lord Geoffrey's daughter is to be married this summer," he says between bites, "to the son of Lord Pembroke from the next county. Such alliances between noble families are important events that can affect everyone on the manor. A favourable marriage could bring prosperity through new trade connections or political advantages. An unfavourable one might lead to conflict or increased demands on the peasantry to fund lavish wedding celebrations." "Will there be a feast for the village?" your mother asks. Noble weddings sometimes included celebrations for the common folk, with extra food and ale distributed as a show of generosity. Your father shrugs. "Too early to say, but I'd wager we'll all be put to work preparing for the ceremony, regardless." As the evening deepens into night and the fire burns low, you find yourself thinking about the contrasts in your world. The daughter of Lord Geoffrey will bring a substantial dowry to her marriage: land, money, fine clothes and household goods. Her wedding will be a lavish affair with musicians, elaborate foods and guests from far and wide. When your time comes to marry, perhaps to Emma Cooper with her bright eyes or to some other village girl, the celebration will be simpler. A modest feast for family and neighbours, perhaps a piper if someone can afford to hire one, and gifts of practical household items to start your new life together. Your dowry or bride price will be measured in tools, livestock, and perhaps a small piece of land to work, not in gold or silks. Yet both marriages, noble and common, serve the same essential purposes in your society, creating alliances, ensuring the continuation of family lines, and establishing new households that will contribute to the community's survival. These thoughts follow you into sleep, where your dreams mix the familiar rhythms of village life with vague visions of the wider world beyond, a world you've heard about in travelers' tales but may never see for yourself. Another day dawns, another link in the endless chain of seasonal work that defines your existence. The ground has dried somewhat after yesterday's rain, and field work resumes. Today, you join a group spreading manure on the newly ploughed fields, perhaps the least pleasant task in the agricultural calendar, but vital for maintaining soil fertility. The manor's muck heap has been accumulating all winter, a mixture of animal droppings, household waste, straw, and ashes. Now, this decomposed matter must be spread evenly across the fields before planting. You use a wooden fork to lift the smelly substance into a handcart, which is then wheeled to the field and dumped in small piles that others spread with rakes and hoes. The smell is overwhelming, especially as the sun warms the air. Flies buzz around your head, occasionally landing on your sweaty skin. You breathe through your mouth as much as possible, trying to ignore the stench that seems to permeate everything, including your clothes and hair. Despite the unpleasantness, there's no denying the importance of this work. The manure will help ensure a better harvest, and a better harvest means more food for everyone, including your family's share after the Lord has taken his portion and the church its tithe. As you work, you notice Emma Cooper among the group of women and girls spreading the manure piles with rakes. She catches your eye and smiles briefly before returning to her task. The simple interaction sends a flutter through your chest, and you find yourself working with renewed energy, occasionally stealing glances in her direction. During the midday break, you sit with your back against a hedgerow, chewing your bread and cheese. To your surprise, Emma comes to sit nearby, along with her younger sister and another girl from the village. "Hello, Thomas," she says, her voice carrying just a hint of shyness. "Mother says your family's sheep had twins this spring." 3 sets, you confirm, proud of this small prosperity. Your family keeps only a small flock, just 6 ewes and a ram, but multiple births mean more wool for spinning and weaving, and perhaps an extra animal to sell at market or butcher for meat. The conversation is simple, revolving around village news and the upcoming Easter celebrations, but you find yourself tongue-tied more than once, especially when Emma laughs at something you've said. Her presence makes you acutely aware of the manure stains on your clothing and the dirt under your fingernails, though she's just as dishevelled from the same work. All too soon, the steward calls everyone back to their tasks, and the brief social interlude ends. But as you return to the muck heap, there's a lightness in your step that wasn't there before. The remainder of the day passes in the same malodorous labour, but somehow it seems less onerous now. By sunset, several acres have been fertilised, ready for the next phase of planting. You return home dirty and exhausted, but carrying a small, warm glow of possibility about Emma Cooper and what your mother had hinted at regarding your future. The rhythm of your days continues, each one filled with labour, but also with the small joys and concerns that make up a human life, regardless of the era. You work, you eat, you sleep, you interact with family and community. You worry about the weather and the harvest, about pleasing your parents and the steward, about your future prospects within the confines of your station. And through it all, the land remains the constant centre of your existence. The soil that you turn with your plough, that you fertilise with manure, that you seed with grain, and that, God willing, will yield the crops that sustain life for another year in your small corner of medieval Europe. The evening fire casts long shadows on the wall of your cottage as your mother stirs the cooking pot and your father mends a broken tool. Your brothers play a quiet game with pebbles on the packed earth floor while the baby sleeps in a small wooden cradle, a family heirloom passed down through generations. Outside, the last light fades from the sky and another day in the life of a medieval serf comes to its close. Your eyelids grow heavy as you stretch out on your straw mattress, the familiar scratchy texture now a comfort rather than an irritation. Tomorrow will bring new tasks, new challenges, and perhaps new possibilities. But for now, sleep beckons, carrying you away from the harsh realities of your medieval existence into dreams that know no boundaries of time or station. The weeks pass in a steady rhythm of labour and rest, the days growing longer as spring deepens towards summer. The fields that you and the other villagers ploughed and fertilised are now showing the first tender shoots of barley and rye, delicate green lines against the dark soil. In the strips of land allocated to your family, your mother has planted vegetables, onions, garlic, cabbages and turnips that will supplement your diet through the coming months. The air feels different now, carrying the scent of growing things and warm earth rather than the damp chill of early spring. Your days follow the sun, beginning at first light and ending when darkness makes work impossible. The church bells mark the hours of prayer. Prime at dawn, terce in mid-morning, sext at noon, none in mid-afternoon, vespers at sunset, and compline before bed, providing structure to each day's labour. Today begins like any other, with a simple breakfast of porridge, but there's excitement in the air because it's the feast day of St. Mark, which coincides with rogation days, a time when the village processes around the boundaries of the parish, asking for God's blessing on the fields and a bountiful harvest to come. Make sure your face is clean, your mother reminds your younger brothers. And Thomas, wear your better tunic. Father Matthew will want you to help carry the cross. Being chosen to carry the parish cross in the procession is an honour, recognising your transition from boy to young man. You feel a mixture of pride and nervousness at the responsibility. The wooden cross is heavy, mounted on a long pole that must be held upright throughout the lengthy walk around the parish boundaries. The villagers gather at the church after breaking their fast. Nearly everyone is present, absent only those too ill to walk or those tasked with watching over the smallest children. Lord Geoffrey himself has come down from the manor house, along with his wife and their 3 children. On such occasions, the usual social barriers remain firmly in place, but there's a sense of community that transcends the everyday divisions between lord and peasant. Father Matthew emerges from the church in his finest vestments, carrying a small reliquary that contains a fragment of bone from St. Mark. The priest's face is solemn as he hands you the processional cross, its wooden surface smooth from years of handling. "Carry it high, Thomas," he instructs. "It leads us all in blessing the fields." The weight of the cross settles into your hands as you take your place at the head of the procession. Behind you comes Father Matthew with the reliquary, then Lord Geoffrey and his family, followed by the rest of the village roughly according to status. Free tenants first, then serfs, with the few landless labourers at the rear. The procession moves slowly along the village paths and out to the fields. Father Matthew stops at regular intervals to sprinkle holy water on the boundary markers and newly sprouted crops, chanting prayers in Latin that few in the village understand but all respect. Everyone joins in the responses they've learned by rote, their voices rising together in supplication for good weather, healthy crops, and protection from pestilence. The sun climbs higher as you walk and the cross grows heavier in your hands. Your shoulders begin to ache, but you dare not falter or show weakness. This is part of becoming a man in your community, demonstrating that you can bear burdens with dignity and endurance. The circuit of the parish takes several hours, winding through fields and pastures along the edge of the woodland and past the small stream that provides water for the village. At each significant boundary point, everyone stops while Father Matthew performs a brief blessing. These pauses give you a chance to shift the cross slightly, easing the strain on your muscles. You notice Emma Cooper watching you from her place in the procession. When your eyes meet, she offers an encouraging smile. Her father, John Cooper, is one of the village's free tenants, not bound to the manor like your family, but paying rent directly for his land. The Coopers' slightly higher status makes them desirable connections, which is partly why your mother has been hinting at a possible match. When the procession finally returns to the church, your arms feel like lead and there's a dull ache between your shoulder blades. But you've completed your duty without complaint, and you can see approval in your father's eyes as you carefully return the cross to its stand inside the church. The religious observance is followed by a rare moment of communal celebration. Tables have been set up on the village green, laden with food that each household has contributed according to their means. Your mother has baked a special bread flavoured with herbs from her garden, while other families have brought cheese, early vegetables and small barrels of ale. Lord Geoffrey has provided a roasted pig, a luxury that brings excited murmurs from the gathered villagers. "The Lord is generous this year," your father comments quietly as you find places to sit on the grass. Perhaps the wedding plans for his daughter put him in good spirits. The feast is a welcome break from your usual fare. The pork is rich and flavourful, the fat melting on your tongue. There's bread and cheese in abundance, and even a bit of honey to sweeten the experience. The ale flows freely, though as a youth you're expected to drink sparingly. The adults become merrier as the afternoon progresses, their laughter growing louder, their movements less restrained. Music adds to the festive atmosphere. Wat the Miller plays a simple wooden flute, while his son accompanies him on a small drum. The tunes are lively, encouraging people to dance despite their everyday weariness. You watch as several village girls, including Emma, form a circle and move in time to the music, their usual reserve melting away in the joy of the moment. "Go on," your mother nudges you with her elbow. "Ask Emma for a dance. It's expected on feast days." Your face grows warm at the suggestion, but the special nature of the day gives you courage. You approach the circle of dancing girls, waiting for a natural pause in the music before catching Emma's eye. "Would you like to dance?" you ask, your voice cracking slightly with nervousness. Emma's cheeks flush pink, but she nods, stepping away from her friends to take your outstretched hand. Her palm feels small and warm against yours, slightly rough from daily work, but still somehow delicate. The music begins again, a lively tune that has you both moving in the simple patterns that everyone in the village knows from childhood. Dancing together is one of the few permitted forms of physical contact between unmarried young people, closely watched by parents and elders to ensure propriety. Still, there's an undeniable thrill in the brief touches and shared movements, the chance to speak a few words away from listening ears. "You carried the cross well today," Emma says as you circle each other. "Father Matthew doesn't choose just anyone." "My arms may never recover," you admit with a rueful smile, "but it was an honour." "My father says you're skilled with the plough for someone your age," she continues. "He notices such things. This indirect compliment from John Cooper means more than you can express. A father would not encourage his daughter's interest in a young man he didn't consider worthy or promising. Despite the difference in your family's status, there might truly be a possibility for a match in the future." The dance ends too soon, and Emma returns to her friends while you rejoin your family. Your younger brothers tease you mercilessly about your red face, but your mother looks pleased, and even your father gives an approving nod. As the sun begins to set, the feast winds down. Lord Geoffrey and his family are the first to leave, returning to the comfort of the manor house. Gradually, the villagers disperse to their cottages, carrying leftover food that will supplement tomorrow's meals. The respite has been welcome, but tomorrow brings a return to the regular rhythm of work. Back in your cottage, the family settles around the fire as darkness falls. Your father uses the mellow mood following the feast to speak of serious matters. "Lord Geoffrey's steward stopped me today," he says, his voice low. "There's to be an increase in our labour service. 4 days a week now, instead of 3. At least until the wedding preparations are complete." Your mother's face tightens with concern. 4 days? When will we tend our own strips? The barley needs weeding, and the peas will soon need stakes. "We'll manage," your father says firmly. "We have no choice. The Lord's daughter marries in August, and there's much to be done. Extra hunting for meat, gathering herbs and flowers, cleaning and preparing the great hall. Every family on the manor must contribute." This is the reality of your existence as serfs. While custom and tradition provide some protection against arbitrary demands, ultimately your labour belongs to Lord Geoffrey. An increase in service days means less time to work your family's land, which could mean less food on your table come winter. But complaint is futile and potentially dangerous. The manor court, where disputes are settled, is presided over by the Lord himself or his steward. "Thomas and I will take the extra day at the manor," your father continues. "You and the boys can manage our strips, Agnes. We'll work our own land in the evenings if needed." Your mother nods, though her expression remains troubled. As a farmer's wife, she's no stranger to hard work, but the additional burden will fall heavily on everyone in the family. Sleep comes quickly that night despite the concerning news. The combination of the long procession, the rich food of the feast, and the dancing has left you pleasantly exhausted. Your dreams are a mixture of Emma's smile and the weight of the processional cross, symbolic, perhaps, of the intertwined promise and burden that life holds for a young man in your position. The next morning arrives with a misty dawn. Your body aches from yesterday's exertions, but there's no time to coddle sore muscles. Today marks the beginning of the increased labour service, and the steward will be watching closely to ensure everyone fulfills their obligation. Breakfast is hasty, a piece of bread dipped in ale, eaten while standing. Your father is unusually quiet, his mind clearly occupied with concerns about the coming weeks. As you leave the cottage together, he places a hand on your shoulder. "Keep your head down and work hard," he advises. "Don't give the steward any reason to single you out. These are difficult times and we must be careful." The warning seems excessive. You've always been diligent in your work, but something in your father's tone makes you pay attention. There's an undercurrent of tension in the village that you don't fully understand, whispers among the adults that cease when younger ears come within range. Today's assignment is clearing brush and fallen branches from the woodland path that leads to the neighbouring manor. Lord Pembroke's family will use this route when they come for the wedding, and Lord Geoffrey wants to make a good impression. It's physically demanding work, but not unpleasant. The woods are cool and fragrant with the scent of moss and new growth, a welcome change from the open fields. You work alongside men from several families, including John Cooper. He's a solidly built man in his 40s with a reputation for fairness and hard work. As a free tenant, he could have sent his son in his place for this labour, but he's chosen to come himself. This is not unusual. Free tenants often work alongside serfs for communal projects, maintaining the social bonds that help the village function as a unit, despite differences in status. During a brief rest, when the steward has moved further down the path to check on other workers, John Cooper approaches you. "You've got a good strong back, Thomas," he observes, offering you a drink from his water skin and a level head from what I've seen. "Thank you, sir," you respond, careful to show proper respect to an elder and a man of higher standing. John studies you thoughtfully. "Your father's taught you well. How old are you now? 14? "Yes, sir. 15 come Michaelmas." He nods, seeming satisfied with this information. A good age, old enough to be thinking about the future. He pauses, then adds, "Emma mentioned you danced well yesterday." Your face grows warm at this direct reference to his daughter. She's very kind to say so. A hint of a smile crosses John's weathered face. Kind, yes, but not given to empty flattery. He hands you back the water skin. We should return to work before Walter notices our idleness. The conversation is brief but significant. John Cooper has deliberately sought you out, assessed you, and made an indirect reference to his daughter in the careful social dance of your community. This is tantamount to an expression of interest in a potential future connection between your families. The remainder of the day passes in hard physical labour, but your spirits are buoyed by the interaction with John Cooper. When you return home, dirty and exhausted, you mention the conversation to your father as you both wash your hands and faces in a basin of water your mother has prepared. He's taking your measure, your father confirms, his expression a mixture of pride and caution. But don't let it go to your head. John Cooper has options for his daughter, and these things take time. Emma's not even 14 yet, your mother adds practically. There's no hurry for either of you, but it's good that her father sees your worth. The matter is left there, but you notice your parents exchanging meaningful glances when they think you're not looking. A good marriage connection is important for everyone in the family, potentially improving your collective prospects and standing within the community. Dinner that night is simple but satisfying. A pottage of peas and onions flavoured with a small piece of salt pork accompanied by coarse bread. There's a sense of normalcy in the familiar routine of the evening meal, the family gathered around the fire, each person recounting the events of their day. Your younger brother Will, who's 10, proudly describes helping your mother weed the vegetable garden. 7-year-old Peter has spent his day gathering kindling in the woods under the supervision of an older neighbour boy. Even your little sister Mary, barely 2, babbles excitedly about the chicken she helped feed, though only a few of her words are intelligible. These quiet family moments are the foundation of your existence, the simple pleasures and connections that make the hardships bearable. Despite the increased labour obligations, despite the uncertainty of the harvest to come, there is stability in the knowledge that you belong here, that your place in the world, though humble, is secure. As the days pass, spring fully gives way to summer. The fields transform from bare earth to lush green, the crops growing visibly with each passing week. The increased labour service continues, but your family adapts, working longer hours on your own land when you can. Your mother and brothers take on more responsibility for tending your strips while you and your father fulfil the obligation to Lord Geoffrey. The forest that provides so many vital resources for your family, firewood, game, wild foods and building materials, is showing its summer abundance. Whenever possible, you spend time there, gathering what you can. One evening, after a full day of labour on the manor lands, you venture into the woods with a small sack to collect early berries for your mother. The forest is different in the golden light of late afternoon, dappled shadows playing across the undergrowth, birds calling to one another overhead. You move quietly, eyes scanning the ground and bushes for the telltale red of wild strawberries or the darker hue of early blackberries. These small sweet treats are rare luxuries that bring delight to your younger siblings. As you bend to pick a cluster of strawberries, a rustling sound catches your attention. You freeze, suddenly alert. Hunting in the Lord's forest is strictly forbidden to peasants, a crime punishable by severe penalties. But you've brought no bow or snare, only your gathering sack. Through the trees, you glimpse a figure moving. At first, you think it might be another villager on a similar errand, but then you recognise the distinctive cap and tunic of Walter, the steward. He hasn't seen you yet, and appears to be examining something on the ground, his back to your position. Curiosity overcomes caution, and you carefully edge closer, moving from tree to remain concealed. Walter is kneeling now, and you can see that he's handling something. Small objects that he's counting and placing in a leather pouch. With a shock, you realise they're coins. More money than you've ever seen in one place. The steward's furtive behaviour and the unexpected cache of money raise immediate questions. Manor stewards are well paid for their service, but not so well that they would normally have such sums to hide in the forest. Is he stealing from Lord Geoffrey, or is something else happening here? Before you can ponder further, a twig snaps under your foot. The sound seems deafening in the quiet forest. Walter's head jerks up, his body tensing as he quickly secures the pouch and rises to his feet. "Oh, who's there?" he calls sharply. "Show yourself." Heart pounding, you step back, accidentally rustling the undergrowth further. Walter turns toward the sound, his hand moving to the knife at his belt. You know you should reveal yourself. Being caught hiding would look far worse than simply being seen gathering berries, but instinct holds you still as the steward's gaze sweeps the area where you're concealed. After what seems an eternity, Walter apparently decides the sounds were made by an animal. He tucks the pouch securely inside his tunic, glances around once more, and then strides away through the trees, moving quickly back toward the village. You remain frozen in place until the steward's footsteps fade completely. Only then do you release the breath you've been holding, your heart still racing. Whatever you've witnessed feels dangerous, knowledge that could put you at risk if Walter realized you had seen him. The discovery casts a shadow over your berry gathering, and you hurry to fill your sack before the light fades completely. As you make your way home, you debate whether to tell your father what you've seen. He's always taught you to be honest, but he's also cautioned you about the dangers of involving yourself in matters that don't concern you, especially those touching on the affairs of your betters. The cottage is warm and welcoming when you return, the familiar smell of cooking pottage filling the single room. Your mother's face lights up at the sight of the berries, and your siblings crowd around excitedly. In the simple joy of this moment, the strange encounter in the forest recedes slightly, though it continues to nag at the edges of your mind. Later, when the younger children are asleep and your mother is spinning by the dim light of the fire, you quietly relate what you saw to your father. His expression grows increasingly grave as you speak. "You're certain it was Walter, and that he was hiding coins?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper. You nod, suddenly afraid that you've done the wrong thing by telling him. Your father is silent for a long moment, staring into the embers of the fire. Finally, he sighs heavily. "Listen to me carefully, Thomas. You must never speak of this to anyone else. Not your brothers, not your friends, and especially not to Emma or her father. Do you understand?" "But what does it mean?" you ask, confused by his reaction. "Is Walter stealing from Lord Geoffrey?" "It's not our place to question the steward's actions," your father says firmly. "Whatever Walter is doing, it could be dangerous for us to know about it. The best thing, the only thing we can do is pretend you saw nothing." "Your father is right," your mother interjects, her hands never pausing in their work with the spindle. "In matters between the lord and his servants, a wise serf keeps his eyes down and his mouth shut. Their caution troubles you, but you trust their judgment. Life as a serf requires careful navigation of the power structures that control your existence. Drawing attention to yourself by questioning the actions of someone like Walter could have serious consequences for your entire family." That night, as you lie on your straw mattress listening to your brother's soft breathing, the image of the steward counting coins in the forest plays through your mind. There's a wider world of intrigue and politics that exists above your station, affecting your life in ways you only dimly understand. It's a sobering reminder that for all the security your position provides, it also keeps you vulnerable to the decisions and actions of those with power over you. Summer deepens, the days growing hotter as the fields ripen toward harvest. The increased labour service continues, leaving everyone in the village tired and occasionally short-tempered. But there's also anticipation building for the upcoming wedding celebration, which promises food, music, and a rare break from the relentless cycle of work. Your encounter with Walter in the forest gradually fades from immediate concern, though you notice your father watching the steward more carefully during work assignments. Walter, for his part, shows no sign of suspecting that his secret activities have been observed. Life continues in its established patterns, the rhythm of the agricultural year pulling everyone along in its inexorable flow. One evening, as you return from helping your father repair a broken fence on your family's strip of land, you notice a stranger speaking with Father Matthew outside the church. The man's clothes mark him as neither peasant nor noble, but something in between. Perhaps a merchant or a skilled craftsman from a nearby town. He gestures animatedly as he speaks, while the priest listens with a serious expression. Your curiosity is piqued, but you know better than to linger obviously or approach too closely. Strangers in the village are uncommon enough to generate interest, but village gossip will soon reveal the man's purpose if it concerns the community. Sure enough, at dinner that night your mother has news. Agnes from the bakehouse says the man talking to Father Matthew is a stonemason from Lincoln, she reports as she serves the pottage. Come to discuss repairs to the church roof before winter. Lincoln, your father repeats, impressed. That's 3 days' journey at least. The church roof must be worse than it looks. Apparently, Bishop Hugh is providing funds for repairs to several parish churches in the diocese, your mother continues, clearly pleased to be sharing interesting information. Father Matthew has been petitioning for help since last winter's storms damaged the bell tower. This is welcome news for the village. A sound church building is important not just for worship but for community gatherings, especially during the winter months when the thick stone walls provide shelter from the elements. The presence of a skilled stonemason also presents potential work opportunities for some villagers as labourers, carrying materials and assisting with the construction. Do you think Lord Geoffrey will reduce our service days when the mason needs help? You ask hopefully. Your father shakes his head. More likely he'll expect us to do both, fulfill our regular service and assist with the church repairs, but perhaps there will be payment for the extra work. Even a small payment would be welcome. Your family, like most in the village, operates largely without currency, producing much of what you need and bartering for the rest. Actual coins are rare and precious, saved for special purchases or emergency needs. As you drift off to sleep that night, your thoughts are a mixture of the day's events and plans for tomorrow. The changing seasons bring shifting patterns of work and opportunity, each with its own challenges and rewards. Summer's abundance is accompanied by long hours of labour under the hot sun, but winter's rest comes with the threat of cold and hunger if the harvest is insufficient. Through it all, the constancy of family and community provides structure and meaning to your existence. Your place in the world may be humble, but it is secure in its familiarity. The small cottage that shelters you, the land that feeds you, the rhythms of work and prayer that order your days. Despite the hardships and limitations of life as a serf, there is comfort in belonging so completely to this place and these people. Tomorrow will bring another day of service to the manor, another step in the cycle that has sustained your ancestors for generations and will, God willing, continue to sustain you and your descendants for generations to come. With this thought, you surrender to sleep, your body relaxing into the familiar embrace of the straw mattress as the night deepens around your family's cottage. Summer unfolds in a tapestry of greens and golds, the landscape transformed by growing crops and wild abundance. The days stretch long, with first light appearing before you rise and dusk lingering well after your evening meal. This extended daylight means extended working hours. From dawn until the light fails, your hands and back are engaged in the constant labour that defines a serf's existence. The barley in Lord Geoffrey's fields stands waist-high now, the heads beginning to form and swell with grain. In your family's strips, the vegetables are thriving under your mother's careful tending. Cabbages forming tight heads, onions pushing up through the soil, peas climbing their stakes. The promise of food is everywhere, though the critical harvest still lies ahead, and much could go wrong before the crops are safely gathered. Work on the manor continues at an increased pace. With Lord Geoffrey's daughter's wedding approaching in August, there are endless preparations. You've been assigned to a group building additional tables and benches for the feast using timber from the manor woodland. It's satisfying work compared to some tasks, allowing you to use the woodworking skills your father has taught you over the years. The workshop is set up in an open-sided shed near the manor house, providing shade while allowing fresh air to circulate. The rich smell of sawdust fills your nostrils as you plane a rough board smooth, your arm muscles burning pleasantly with the repetitive motion. Nearby, other men and boys from the village work on different aspects of the project, splitting logs, cutting joints, assembling finished pieces. "Mind your stroke there, Thomas," advises Godwin the carpenter, a free man who travels between manors offering his specialised skills. "Follow the grain of the wood, not against it." You adjust your technique, feeling the plane glide more smoothly across the oak plank. Godwin nods approval before moving on to check another worker's progress. Having come from a larger town, the carpenter brings news and different perspectives that make his presence interesting beyond his craft knowledge. "Is it true that in Lincoln some craftsmen work only at their trade?" you ask during a brief water break. "Never farming at all?" Godwin laughs, taking a long drink from the communal water bucket before answering. "True enough. Guild members, the master craftsmen, they'll have workshops in the town, sometimes with 3 or 4 apprentices learning the trade. They buy their food from markets or directly from farmers who bring goods to sell." The concept is almost impossible to imagine, a life completely removed from the land, from growing the food that sustains you. Everyone in your village, even the miller and the blacksmith, works some land alongside their specialised tasks. "And how do they live when winter comes, when there's no fresh food to buy?" your friend Robert asks, clearly sharing your bewilderment. "They store provisions, same as you," Godwin explains, "but towns get regular deliveries from surrounding manors, bread baked daily, meat and fish brought in, and there's always preserved foods, smoked, salted, dried. Some townsfolk never touch a plough their entire lives." The conversation gives you much to think about as you return to your work. The world beyond your village suddenly seems larger and more complex than you'd imagined. Different ways of living, different possibilities, yet you also recognise the security in your connection to the land, the direct relationship between your labour and your sustenance, despite the Lord's claim to a significant portion of what you produce. The midday bell rings from the church tower, signalling a brief rest for food. You retrieve your bundle from where you stored it in the shade. Bread, cheese, and a few early plums that your brother Will found ripening at the edge of the orchard. The fruit is a special treat, sweet, tart juice bursting in your mouth as you bite into the purple flesh. As you eat, you notice Walter the steward talking with a stranger at the edge of the yard. The man is well dressed, with a sword at his hip marking him as someone of importance, perhaps a messenger or representative from Lord Pembroke's household. Their conversation appears intense, with Walter repeatedly shaking his head while the stranger gestures emphatically. You're careful not to stare, remembering all too well what you witnessed in the forest, but your position gives you a clear view without being obvious about your observation. Eventually, Walter seems to relent, nodding reluctantly before the two men walk toward the manor house together. "Who do you suppose that is?" Robert whispers, having noticed your attention. "No idea," you reply truthfully. "Something to do with the wedding preparations, most likely." The brief rest period ends, and you return to your planing, but your mind remains unsettled. There was something in Walter's manner, a tension, a furtiveness, that reminded you of his behaviour in the forest. Whatever business the steward is conducting, it seems to exist alongside his official duties, rather than as part of them. Your father's warning echoes in your memory. It's dangerous for serfs to involve themselves in the affairs of their betters. You resolve again to keep your observations to yourself, focusing instead on the woodwork before you. The afternoon passes in steady labour. By the time the day's work ends, your arms ache pleasantly from the repetitive motion of planing and sawing. Calluses on your palms have toughened over the years of farm work, but the woodworking has created tender spots in new locations. You flex your fingers as you walk home, feeling the pull and stretch of tired muscles. Your mother has a surprise waiting when you and your father return to the cottage, a rabbit stew bubbling in the cooking pot. The rich, savoury smell fills the small space, making your stomach growl with anticipation. Will caught it in a snare this morning, she explains, looking proudly at your 10-year-old brother, who beams at the recognition. At the edge of the fallow field where the tall grass grows, hunting small game like rabbits is permitted to peasants, unlike the deer and boar that are exclusively the Lord's prey. Still, a successful catch is cause for celebration. Meat is a rarity in your diet, appearing perhaps once or twice a week in small quantities, if at all. "Well done, Will," your father says, ruffling the boy's hair affectionately. "You've provided well for the family today." The praise makes Will stand taller, his chest puffing slightly with pride. At 10, he's eager to contribute meaningfully to the household, to be recognised as more than just another mouth to feed. The successful snaring of the rabbit represents an important step in his growing capabilities. The stew is delicious. Chunks of rabbit meat flavoured with herbs from your mother's garden, thickened with a handful of barley and filled out with turnips and onions. Every morsel is savoured, the rich broth sopped up with bread until the wooden bowls are practically clean enough to put away without washing. After the meal, your father shares news he heard during the day's work. The mason from Lincoln has hired 4 men from the village to help with the church repairs, he says, paying actual coin for the labour, not just credit at the alehouse. "Who's been chosen?" your mother asks, already working on mending a tear in Peter's tunic as she sits by the fire. Hugh the blacksmith's son, for one. Strong back on that boy. 2 of the Atwell brothers, and old Cedric, surprisingly. "Cedric?" Your mother raises an eyebrow. He must be 50 if he's a day. Apparently, he has experience from when they built the bridge at Thornford, knows how to mix mortar properly. Your father stretches his tired shoulders. The work begins after the harvest. 4 weeks of labour with food provided and 2 pennies a day. The amount seems princely to your ears. 2 pennies a day would mean nearly a shilling a week, enough to buy a good wool cloak or several pairs of shoes with money left over. "Could I be considered for such work?" you ask, trying not to sound too eager. Your father gives you an appraising look. "Perhaps. You're young yet, but strong enough, and you've shown good skill with the woodworking." He pauses. "I'll speak to Father Matthew when the time comes, if you wish it." This potential opportunity fills you with excitement. Not only would the payment be significant, but working closely with a master craftsman from a city would provide valuable knowledge and connections beyond your village. Such advantages could make a substantial difference to your future prospects. The evening draws on, the fire burning low as your family prepares for sleep. Outside, a gentle summer rain begins to fall, drumming softly on the thatched roof. A few drips find their way through thin spots in the thatch, but your mother has placed familiar bowls and pots in the known leak locations, catching the water with practiced efficiency. The sound of rain is soothing, and you drift towards sleep with thoughts of stonework, pennies, and possibilities swirling in your mind. The following weeks bring a steady progression toward harvest time. The labour on wedding preparations continues alongside the regular work of maintaining fields and animals. Your muscles grow accustomed to the varied tasks, developing different strengths and tolerances. The calluses on your hands thicken, your skin tanning dark where exposed to the sun. One particularly hot afternoon, while cutting reeds from the village pond for fresh thatch, you spot Emma and several other girls washing clothes at the pond's edge. The sight is common enough. Laundry is a regular chore that brings village women and girls to the water at least weekly. But today, something catches your particular attention. Emma is standing slightly apart from the others, her attention focused on a small object in her hands rather than the garment she should be washing. Even from a distance, you can see that she's weaving something, small stems of reed or grass forming a pattern between her fingers. Curiosity and the desire for a closer look lead you to move around the pond's edge, ostensibly to cut reeds from a new location. As you draw nearer, you can see that Emma is indeed creating a small woven cross from reeds, a common protective charm that many villagers place above their doors or in their fields. She looks up as your shadow falls across the water, her expression momentarily startled before relaxing into recognition. "Thomas," she acknowledges with a small nod. "The reeds are good on this side." "They are," you agree, gesturing with your cutting knife to the tall stems growing densely at the water's edge. Then, nodding toward her handiwork, you add, "That's finely made." A slight blush colours her cheeks. "Thank you. It's for our new calf. Mother says it will help it grow strong." The Cooper family's cow had given birth just last week, an important event for any household, as a healthy calf represents future milk, cheese, and eventually meat or a valuable animal to sell or trade. "I'm sure it will help," you respond, genuinely appreciative of both the skill in her weaving and the sentiment behind it. Protection for livestock is taken very seriously. Animals represent such a significant investment of resources that their loss can be devastating to a family. Emma tucks the finished cross into her pocket and picks up the shirt she'd been neglecting. "Father says you're doing well with the wedding preparations. He saw the tables you helped build." The mention of John Cooper's approval sends a warm feeling through your chest. "Godwin, the carpenter, has been teaching us proper joining techniques. It's interesting work." Your conversation is interrupted by a call from one of the other girls, reminding Emma that the laundry won't wash itself. With an apologetic smile, she returns to her task and you to yours. But the brief interaction leaves you with a pleasant sensation that lingers through the remainder of the afternoon. That evening, a commotion in the village centre draws everyone from their cottages. A group of travellers has arrived, pilgrims on their way to the shrine of St Thomas Becket at Canterbury. They're a mixed company of about a dozen people, some clearly wealthy, others of more modest means, all united in their religious journey. Father Matthew has offered them the church porch for shelter overnight, and villagers are contributing what food they can spare to welcome the travellers. Such visits are infrequent but highly valued, bringing news, stories, and a connection to the wider world beyond your isolated community. Your family joins others gathering around the visitors as they eat their evening meal in the churchyard. One man, dressed in the simple robes of a monk, is particularly eloquent, describing cities and castles he's seen on his travels. The children sit wide-eyed as he speaks of London, with its stone bridge spanning the great River Thames, shops and houses built directly on the bridge itself, and more people than could be counted in a day. "And the king's palace," the monk continues, "with halls so vast that hundreds of nobles can feast together, and tapestries covering walls from floor to ceiling, showing great battles and biblical scenes. It's difficult to imagine such splendour. The grandest building you've ever seen is Lord Geoffrey's manor house, with its stone lower storey and timber upper floor. The idea of structures many times larger, filled with luxuries beyond comprehension, seems almost like a fairy tale." Another pilgrim, a merchant's wife by her dress, distributes small wooden tokens bearing the image of St Thomas to the village children. These humble objects, touched to the actual shrine on a previous pilgrimage, are believed to carry a small portion of the saint's blessing. Your brother Peter receives one, clutching it reverently in his small hand as though it were made of gold rather than simple wood. The evening extends longer than usual, with Father Matthew permitting the special occasion to delay the normal rhythm of sleep that follows sunset. Lanterns and torches illuminate the gathering as stories continue to be shared. Your father engages one of the pilgrims in conversation about conditions on the roads and in the towns they've passed through, gleaning practical information amid the more colourful tales. When you finally return home to sleep, your mind is alive with images of distant places and different ways of living. The monk's descriptions have expanded your understanding of the world, making you acutely aware of how small and limited your experience has been thus far. Yet rather than creating dissatisfaction, the stories have sparked curiosity and a sense of connection to something larger than your immediate surroundings. As July progresses toward August, the fields of barley and rye begin to turn from green to gold, signalling the approach of harvest time. The pace of work intensifies further, with preparations happening on multiple fronts: the wedding celebration, the church repairs, and most importantly, the gathering of crops that will sustain the community through the coming year. The weather becomes a constant topic of conversation and concern. Too much rain now could flatten the standing grain or cause it to rot. Too little could make the ground hard and difficult to work when it's time to prepare the fields for the next planting. Every morning faces turn skyward, assessing clouds and wind direction with the expertise born of generations depending on nature's cooperation. One morning, as you head to the manor for your day's labour, you notice unusual activity at the village boundary. Several men on horseback have arrived, and with them is a cart carrying large wooden cages containing birds, falcons and hawks by the look of them. The distinctive clothing of the riders marks them as falconers, specialists in training and handling the hunting birds favoured by nobility. Lord Geoffrey himself has come down from the manor house to greet the newcomers, his excitement evident even from a distance. Falconry is a passion among the noble class, a sport that combines the thrill of the hunt with the display of wealth and status that trained hunting birds represent. You keep a respectful distance, but can't help slowing your pace to observe the beautiful creatures. Their keen eyes and proud bearing command attention, even confined as they are in the travelling cages. These birds will likely play a role in entertaining Lord Pembroke and his household during the wedding festivities, showcasing Lord Geoffrey's status as a host. Walter the steward catches you watching and barks an order to continue to your assigned work. There's something different in his manner today, a nervous energy that manifests as increased harshness toward the manor workers. Everyone feels it, exchanging glances when the steward's back is turned, but no one dares comment openly. Your task today is harvesting early pears from the manor orchard. These summer fruits ripen before the main harvest begins and are considered a delicacy for the Lord's table. The work requires care. Each pear must be picked at perfect ripeness, with stems intact and skin unblemished. You climb carefully among the branches, placing each fruit gently in the basket slung across your body. From your elevated position in the tree, you have a good view of the manor yard, where preparations for the wedding continue at an increasingly frantic pace. Servants from the manor house scrub the exterior steps with sand and vinegar to brighten the stone. Others hang colourful banners from poles set around the main entrance. The falconers are establishing their birds in a temporary mews constructed near the stables. Amid all this activity, you notice Walter in what appears to be a heated discussion with the same well-dressed stranger you observed before. Their conversation takes place partially concealed behind the brewhouse, but their gestures indicate disagreement. At one point, the stranger grabs Walter's arm, only to have the steward pull away sharply, his face contorted with anger or fear. It's difficult to tell from a distance. The encounter ends with Walter stalking away toward the manor house while the stranger remains in place, his posture rigid with what seems to be frustration. After a moment, he too departs, heading not toward the main buildings but toward the path that leads to the village. Your attention is pulled back to your immediate task when a voice calls up from below the tree. "Those pears won't pick themselves, Thomas. It's Robert who's been assigned to collect the filled baskets and carry them to the manor kitchen, and I've no desire to stand in this heat all day waiting for you to finish daydreaming." You return to your work with renewed focus, but the scene you witnessed has added to your growing sense that something unusual is happening within the manor's affairs, something that may eventually affect the village and its inhabitants, including your family. By midday, the heat has become oppressive. The air feels thick and still, the sun beating down mercilessly from a cloudless sky. Your tunic clings to your back, soaked with sweat, and your throat is parched despite regular drinks from the water bucket provided for the workers. When the bell sounds for the midday rest, there's a collective sigh of relief. Everyone seeks whatever shade is available, under trees, against north-facing walls, beneath the eaves of buildings. You find a spot beneath a large oak at the orchard's edge, gratefully sinking onto the cooler ground in its shadow. You've just unwrapped your midday food: bread, a small piece of cheese, and a couple of the pears that were deemed too ripe or slightly damaged for the Lord's table, when you notice Emma approaching. She carries a covered basket, and her face is flushed from the heat. "My mother sent me with extra water for the orchard workers," she explains, lifting the cloth to reveal several stoppered jugs. "She says this heat will drain the strength from a man faster than the hardest labour." The thoughtful gesture is typical of the Cooper household, small kindnesses that maintain goodwill within the community while subtly reinforcing their slightly higher status. You accept a drink gratefully, the water tasting sweeter for Emma's presence. "Will you sit a moment?" you ask, gesturing to the shaded ground beside you. "You must be hot from walking in this sun." She hesitates, glancing around to ensure propriety. Unmarried young people are expected to maintain certain social distances, especially when unaccompanied by family members, but the public setting and the exceptional heat seem to justify the brief rest, and she settles carefully on the grass, smoothing her skirt around her knees. "Father says the barley will be ready for harvest within the week," she comments, accepting a piece of the ripe pear you offer. "Earlier than usual." "The hot weather has pushed everything forward," you agree. Lord Geoffrey's steward is already organising the harvest cruise. For a brief moment you consider mentioning what you've observed of Walter's strange behaviour, but your father's warning holds you back. Instead, you ask about the Cooper family's new calf, which leads to a pleasant conversation about animals, crops, and the upcoming wedding celebration. All too soon, the rest period ends, and Emma must continue distributing water to other workers while you return to the pear trees. But the brief interaction has brightened your day, making the afternoon's heat more bearable as you work. As the sun begins its descent, bringing welcome relief from the day's heat, you complete your work in the orchard. The gathered pears have been delivered to the manor kitchen, where they'll be transformed into dishes for the Lord's table, poached in wine perhaps, or baked with honey and spices. Walking home, you pass the village green, where several children are playing a game with a ball made of leather scraps stuffed with wool. Among them is your brother Peter, his face alight with the simple joy of play after completing his day's chores. You pause to watch for a moment, remembering when your own days contained more time for such carefree activities. The sight reminds you of how quickly childhood passes in your world. At 7, Peter already has regular responsibilities, gathering kindling, helping with the animals, watching his younger sister when your mother needs to work elsewhere. By 14, you're considered nearly an adult, capable of a full day's labour and beginning to think about your future prospects. It's a rapid transition from play to work, from dependence to contribution. As you continue homeward, the western sky blazes with sunset colours, vibrant oranges and pinks streaking across clouds that have begun to gather on the horizon. The air feels different now, with a heaviness that suggests rain may be coming. After the day's oppressive heat, the prospect of a cooling shower is welcome, though you hope it will hold off until after the night's sleep. The cottage is quiet when you arrive, with only your mother present preparing the evening meal. Your father and brothers are still completing their day's tasks, and little Mary naps on a folded blanket in the corner, her thumb firmly in her mouth. "You're early today," your mother observes, stirring a pot of pottage that smells of onions and herbs. We finished the pear harvest, you explain, washing your hands and face in the basin of water she set out. The cool liquid feels wonderful against your sun-heated skin. Good, I need your help with something before the others return. She wipes her hands on her apron and retrieves a small bundle from a shelf. Unwrapping it reveals several strips of linen and a small clay pot containing a greenish salve. Your father's back has been troubling him, she explains, her voice low, though there's no one to overhear. Too proud to mention it, of course, but I see how he moves. This needs to be applied before the pain grows worse. She demonstrates how to spread the salve, made from comfrey leaves and other herbs from her garden, onto the linen strips, which will then be bound around your father's lower back when he returns. He'll accept it from you more readily than from me, she adds with a knowing smile. Men and their pride. The trust implicit in this task warms you. Your mother is acknowledging your growing maturity, involving you in the care of the family in new ways. It's another small step in the gradual transition from child to adult. As darkness falls and the family gathers for the evening meal, a light rain begins to patter on the thatch above, just enough to settle the dust and cool the air without causing problems for the ripening grain in the fields. Your father accepts the salve and bandages with minimal protest, especially when presented as a practical necessity for the coming harvest work rather than as a remedy for weakness. That night, as you lie on your straw mattress listening to the gentle rain and your brother's steady breathing, you reflect on the day's events, the strange interactions involving Walter, the pleasant conversation with Emma, the trust shown by your mother. Each represents a different thread in the complex weave of relationships that form your life, binding you to family, community, and the land that sustains you all. The rain strengthens slightly, its rhythm on the thatch becoming a soothing lullaby that gradually draws you towards sleep. Tomorrow will bring new tasks, new challenges, and perhaps new understanding. But for now, rest claims you, your body surrendering to weariness while your mind releases its hold on the day's concerns. The morning after the rain dawns clear and fresh, the world washed clean and glistening with lingering droplets that catch the early light. The air feels different, cooler, with a crispness that hints at the changing seasons despite summer's continued warmth. In the fields, the barley and rye stand tall and golden, heavy heads nodding slightly in the gentle breeze. Harvest time has arrived. Walter the steward makes the announcement at daybreak, ringing the manor bell to gather all able-bodied villagers in the courtyard. His face is stern as he delivers Lord Geoffrey's instructions. The barley in the west field will be cut first, beginning tomorrow at dawn, he declares, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. Every household must provide workers according to their obligation. The reeve will assign positions. A murmur passes through the gathering. The timing is tight. Traditionally, harvest would begin after the wedding celebration, but the unusually hot weather has ripened the grain earlier than expected. Waiting could risk losing precious food to storms or wildlife. What of the wedding preparations? Someone asks from the back of the crowd. Walter's expression tightens. Those continue as planned. The Lord's daughter weds in 10 days' time. Some will be assigned to harvest, others to wedding tasks. All will work. His tone leaves no room for question or complaint. As the crowd disperses, your father's face is thoughtful. This will be difficult, he murmurs, more to himself than to you. Harvesting the Lord's fields, preparing for the celebration, and tending our own strips, all at once. We'll manage, you say, echoing his own words from earlier conversations. We always do. He glances at you, a hint of surprise crossing his weathered features, then nods with a small smile. Indeed we do, Thomas. Indeed we do. Harvest is always the most demanding time of the agricultural year, requiring every bit of strength and endurance the community possesses, but it also brings a unique spirit of shared purpose, everyone working together to gather the crops that will sustain life through the coming winter and spring. Despite the exhaustion it promises, there's an undercurrent of anticipation in the village as preparations begin. That evening, your father sharpens the family's sickles, carefully honing the curved blades to razor sharpness. These essential tools must be in perfect condition for the work ahead. A dull sickle means slower cutting and precious grain lost to inefficiency. You help by securing new grips to the handles, binding strips of leather tightly around the worn wood to prevent blisters and provide better control. Your mother prepares extra food for the coming days, bread baked in larger quantities, cheese wrapped in cloth, and a special treat of small honey cakes that will provide quick energy during brief rest periods in the fields. Even your younger siblings are involved in the preparations, filling water flasks and gathering the wide-brimmed straw hats that will offer some protection from the harvest sun. Sleep comes quickly that night, your body somehow sensing the need to store rest before the imminent exertion. Your dreams are filled with golden fields and the rhythmic swing of sickles, a mental rehearsal for the physical reality to come. Dawn arrives with a chorus of roosters from across the village, their calls seemingly more insistent than usual. You rise quickly, splashing cold water on your face to banish the last vestiges of sleep. Breakfast is hearty by your usual standards, porridge enriched with a precious egg, providing protein for the labour ahead. The western field glows in the early morning light as the village assembles at its edge. The Reeve, Gilbert, Lord Geoffrey's representative for agricultural matters, organises everyone into their positions. Men and older boys like yourself will wield the sickles, cutting the grain close to the ground. Women and girls will follow, gathering the cut stalks into bundles. Younger children will glean any fallen heads of grain, ensuring nothing is wasted. "Remember," Gilbert calls out to the assembled workers, "cut clean and cut low. The Lord's portion must be gathered first and properly stored before any man turns to his own strips. This is the reality of feudal obligation. The Lord's needs come before your families, regardless of weather or timing." It's a system you've known all your life, rarely questioning its fundamental inequity because it simply is the way of things. The harvest begins with a murmured prayer led by Father Matthew, asking God's blessing on the work and protection from injury. Then the reapers spread out across the field in a staggered line, each taking a section of appropriate width. The work demands a particular technique, one hand grasping a handful of stalks, the other swinging the sickle in a smooth, controlled motion to cut them near the base. The severed stalks are laid carefully aside for the gatherers to collect. Then a step forward, another handful grasped, another cut made. The motion becomes almost meditative in its repetition, though the physical toll mounts quickly. Sweat begins to soak your tunic within the first hour, the sun climbing higher and adding its heat to the exertion of constant cutting. Your back develops a steady ache from the bent posture required, and your wrist and forearm burn with the repetitive motion of the sickle. But you maintain the pace, knowing that any slacking would be immediately noticed and reported. Behind you, Emma Cooper moves efficiently, gathering your cut stalks into neat bundles and binding them with twisted straw. Occasionally, your eyes meet briefly as she collects what you've cut, and her presence adds a pleasant dimension to the grueling work. Once, when the Reeve's attention is elsewhere, she passes you a water flask with a quick smile before moving on to the next bundle. The sun climbs higher, the heat intensifying as morning gives way to midday. Gilbert calls a brief rest when the church bells sound the noon hour. Everyone sinks gratefully to the ground at the field's edge, seeking whatever shade can be found from the few scattered trees. Food is consumed quickly, bodies refueled for the afternoon's continuation. As you bite into one of your mother's honey cakes, you notice Walter deep in conversation with Lord Geoffrey at the far end of the field. The Lord rarely oversees harvest work directly, usually leaving such matters to his reeve and steward. His presence suggests the unusual timing and dual pressures of harvest and wedding preparations have drawn his particular attention. Even from a distance, the tension in Walter's posture is evident. He gestures repeatedly toward the manor house, while Lord Geoffrey shakes his head firmly. Finally, the steward bows stiffly and strides away, his face set in lines of what might be anger or worry. The rest period ends all too soon, and the work resumes under the afternoon sun. The field seems endless, golden grain stretching away toward the horizon, but gradually, visibly, the standing crop recedes as swath after swath falls to the reaper's sickles. What began as individual efforts melds into a collective rhythm, the entire community moving across the land like a single organism. By the time the sun begins its descent toward the western hills, a significant portion of the field has been harvested. The cut grain stands in neat stooks, bundles arranged upright in circular formations to dry properly before being carried to the threshing floor. The sight brings a sense of accomplishment despite the bone-deep weariness that now affects every harvester. Gilbert finally calls an end to the day's work as the light begins to fade. "Good progress," he announces. "We continue at dawn tomorrow. Remember your positions." The walk home feels longer than usual, your legs heavy and your shoulders slumped with fatigue. But there's also satisfaction in the day's achievement, tangible evidence of productive labour in the harvested field behind you. Your mother has prepared a more substantial evening meal than usual, a recognition of the intense physical demands of harvest work. The pottage is thicker, with extra vegetables and small pieces of salt pork adding flavour and sustenance. There's fresh bread as well, still warm from baking. "How much did you cut today?" your father asks as you eat, his own weariness evident in the careful way he moves. "Nearly half of my assigned section," you reply. "Emma was gathering behind me. She works quickly." A knowing look passes between your parents at the mention of Emma's name, but neither comments directly. Instead, your father says, "The Cooper girl has been well taught by her mother. Efficiency in the field is as important as efficiency in the home." After the meal, there's little energy for the usual evening tasks. Your father checks the sickles, ensuring they're ready for tomorrow, while your mother prepares food for the next day. But conversation is minimal, everyone conserving strength for the days of harvest still ahead. Sleep comes instantly when you finally stretch out on your straw mattress, your body surrendering to exhaustion without resistance. The deep, dreamless rest of physical fatigue claims you completely. Dawn seems to arrive mere moments after you closed your eyes, though the night has passed in its usual hours. Every muscle protests as you rise, stiffness from yesterday's labour-making movement painful until you've stretched and warmed your body into reluctant cooperation. Breakfast is similar to yesterday's, sustaining food designed to provide energy for the morning's work. Your mother has risen even earlier than the rest of the family to ensure everything is prepared. Her own contribution to the harvest effort equally essential, though different in nature. The second day follows the pattern of the first: cutting, gathering, binding, stooking. The work is no less demanding, but your body begins to adapt, finding the rhythm more naturally. Efficiency improves as muscles remember their tasks despite the discomfort. By midday, news travels along the line of harvesters. Lord Geoffrey has decided to delay some of the wedding preparations to focus more hands on the harvest. The unusually hot summer has ripened the grain to the point where waiting even a few days could mean significant losses. The carpenter and his assistants have been reassigned to help with carting the grain, Robert tells you during the brief rest period. Even some of the household servants have been sent to the fields. This decision underscores the fundamental importance of the harvest to everyone in the manor, from the highest to the lowest. Food security transcends even social celebrations, no matter how significant. A lord with empty granaries is a lord whose power and position are compromised. The afternoon brings clouds gathering on the western horizon, thick, dark formations that suggest a summer storm approaching. The Reeve notices them too, his expression growing concerned as he consults with Gilbert. Soon, the order is passed down the line. Increase the pace. Focus on cutting rather than perfect stucking. The race against weather has begun. The entire harvesting crew responds to the urgency, movements becoming faster if somewhat less precise. Your sickle swings in quickening rhythm, hands grasping and cutting with practiced efficiency. Behind you, the gatherers bundle stalks more hastily, prioritizing speed over the usual neat arrangements. The first distant rumble of thunder sounds when approximately 3/4 of the field has been cut. Gilbert's voice rises above the harvesting sounds. "Carts! Bring the carts forward! We'll take what's cut directly to the barn." This represents a change in the usual procedure. Normally, grain would be left in the field to dry for a day or two before being transported to the threshing floor, but the approaching storm has forced an adaptation, accepting the extra work of handling damper grain later, in exchange for ensuring it isn't soaked in the field. The ox-drawn carts lumber across the stubbled portions of the field, positioned strategically to minimise the distance bundles must be carried. A human chain forms, passing the heavy sheaves from the stooks to the carts with remarkable speed and coordination. You find yourself working alongside John Cooper in this effort, the physical strain creating a temporary equality between free tenant and serf. "You've good strength for your age," he comments during a brief pause as one filled cart departs and another takes its place, "and you work smart, not just hard." "Thank you, sir," you respond, the compliment warming you despite the pressing circumstances. "My father has taught me well." "Indeed he has." John's weathered face shows a moment of consideration before he adds, "When harvest is done, come by our cottage. I've a matter to discuss with you and your father." Before you can respond, the next cart arrives and the work demands full attention once more, but the invitation lingers in your mind, raising questions and possibilities that momentarily distract from the physical labour. The storm draws closer, lightning now visible in the distance and thunder following more quickly after each flash. The workers move with increasing urgency, racing to salvage as much grain as possible before the rain begins. You're loading one of the final carts when the first heavy drops begin to fall, fat, cold splashes that promise the downpour to come. Gilbert calls out final instructions, directing the remaining workers to secure what they can and then seek shelter. The rain intensifies rapidly, soaking through your tunic within moments. The last sheaves are tossed haphazardly onto carts, with the focus now entirely on quantity rather than careful arrangement. As the final loaded cart lurches toward the barn, pulled by straining oxen through increasingly muddy ground, the harvesters make their own hasty departures, some toward the manor outbuildings, others toward the village. You run alongside your father, the rain now falling in sheets that limit visibility to a few yards ahead. Water streams down your face, and your sodden clothing clings uncomfortably to your skin. But there's exhilaration mixed with the discomfort. The bulk of the harvest has been secured, saved from the storm by the community's collective effort. Rather than continuing all the way to your cottage, you both seek closer shelter in the village church, as do many others from the harvesting crew. The stone building offers immediate relief from the driving rain, though its interior is dim with only a few candles burning near the altar. Father Matthew moves among the sodden congregation, offering words of comfort and practical assistance in the form of rough cloth for drying faces and hands. The atmosphere is one of weary accomplishment rather than disappointment at the storm's interruption. A sense that a significant challenge has been met successfully, if not perfectly. The west field is nearly complete, your father observes to Hugh the blacksmith, who has found shelter near you. 2 more days should see all the Lord's grain safely harvested, God willing. Aye, Hugh agrees, wringing water from his beard. Then our own strips, though they're small enough to manage quickly with family labour. The conversation turns to estimates of yield and quality, the eternal concerns of an agricultural community. The consensus seems positive. Despite the unusual timing and the rush at the end, the barley harvest appears abundant, with well-filled heads and minimal damage from pests or disease. As you listen to the adults' discussion, you notice Emma seated with her mother and younger siblings across the church. She catches your eye briefly, offering a small smile that suggests shared satisfaction in the day's accomplishments, despite its challenging conclusion. The storm continues for nearly an hour, rain drumming against the church roof and streaming from the gargoyles that direct water away from the stone walls. When it finally begins to ease, people prepare to depart in small groups, heading for their homes where dry clothing and warm food await. Your own cottage, when you reach it through muddy paths and puddles, offers humble but welcome comforts. Your mother already has the fire built up to a good blaze, and steam rises from your sodden garments as you change into your spare clothing. The physical relief of dry fabric against your skin seems an almost extravagant luxury after the day's exertions and soaking. Dinner is simple but filling, more of the harvest time pottage that provides necessary calories for the work, accompanied by bread and a small portion of cheese. The conversation centres around tomorrow's continuation of the harvest, weather permitting, and plans for handling your family's own small strips of land once the Lord's fields are complete. John Cooper asked me to visit after the harvest, you mention when there's a natural pause, said he has a matter to discuss with us. Your father looks up sharply, his spoon pausing halfway to his mouth. Did he say what about? No, just that he wanted to speak with both of us. Your parents exchange one of their meaningful glances, the silent communication of a long partnership. Your mother's expression shows cautious optimism, while your father's remains carefully neutral. We'll see what he has to say when the time comes, he finally responds. The Coopers are good people, fair in their dealings. The subject drops there, but an undercurrent of speculation runs beneath the practical discussions that follow. John Cooper's position as a respected free tenant makes any invitation to his home noteworthy, especially one that includes both you and your father. As evening deepens into night, the physical demands of the day assert their claim on your consciousness. Despite the questions and possibilities swirling in your mind, sleep approaches irresistibly. The last thing you register before drifting off is the gentle patter of lingering rain on the thatch overhead, a soothing rhythm that carries you into dreams. The next morning brings clearing skies and the continued urgency of harvest. The interruption caused by the storm means an intensified schedule, with Lord Geoffrey ordering every available person to the fields. Even some of the usual exemptions are temporarily suspended. The elderly, who normally mind children, are brought to help with lighter tasks, while the children themselves are put to work gathering fallen grain or carrying water to the harvesters. Work in the rain-soaked field is messier and more difficult than before. The ground has turned muddy, making footing uncertain and adding the weight of clinging soil to boots already heavy with water. The remaining standing grain is partially flattened in places, requiring more careful cutting to salvage what can be saved. Despite these challenges, the harvest proceeds with the determination characteristic of people whose survival depends on its success. By midday, the western field is completely cut, its grain either safely stored in the barn or arranged in stooks to dry now that the sun has returned. The reeve redirects the harvesting crew to the north field where rye stands tall and ready. The process begins again, cutting, gathering, binding, stooking, with the practiced efficiency of those who have performed these tasks year after year throughout their lives. As the afternoon progresses, an unexpected visitor arrives at the edge of the field. The well-dressed stranger who has appeared twice before in the company of Walter now approaches on horseback, accompanied by two armed men. Their presence immediately draws attention, work momentarily slowing as people glance curiously in their direction. Gilbert hastens to meet the visitors, his manner showing a mixture of respect and wariness. A brief conversation follows, too distant for you to hear, but ending with Gilbert pointing toward the manor house. The stranger nods curtly, then turns his horse and rides in that direction, his companions following closely. "Who do you suppose that is?" you ask Robert, who works nearby. "No idea," he replies, wiping sweat from his brow. "But did you see the badge on his tunic? That's Lord Pembroke's emblem, the family Lord Geoffrey's daughter is marrying into." This information adds a new dimension to the stranger's repeated appearances. With the wedding approaching rapidly, it makes sense that representatives from the groom's family would be present. Yet something about the man's manner and Walter's reactions to him suggests more complex matters than simple celebration preparations. The mystery has no immediate resolution, however, as the harvest demands full attention until sunset. By the time work ends for the day, the visitors have departed and the village returns to its usual inhabitants. That evening, as your family gathers for the meal, your father shares news heard during the day's labour. The wedding has been postponed by 3 days, he announces. Lord Geoffrey sent word this afternoon. The ceremony will now take place after the completion of harvest. "A wise decision," your mother comments, serving the pottage, "though I wonder how the bride feels about the delay. Noble marriages are arrangements of property and alliance more than matters of feeling," your father responds, with the practical wisdom of his class. A few days' postponement changes nothing of importance. For the common folk of the village, the delay means a brief respite from the dual pressures of harvest and wedding preparations. The focus can remain singularly on gathering the crops while weather permits, with celebration duties to follow afterward. Later, as darkness settles over the village and your family prepares for sleep, a knock sounds at the cottage door. An unusual occurrence at this hour, your father answers cautiously, then steps back to admit Father Matthew, whose presence at this time suggests matters of significance. "Forgive the late intrusion," the priest says, declining the offered seat with a small gesture. "I bring word from the manor. Lord Geoffrey requests additional workers for a special harvest tomorrow, the new wheat field near the river that was planted as an experiment in spring." This request represents an additional burden beyond the already strenuous harvest schedule, but refusal is not a realistic option. Your father nods his understanding. "How many workers?" "One strong person from each household," Father Matthew replies. "Those with special skills in reaping are particularly requested." Your father glances toward you, consideration in his expression. "You're young, but have demonstrated good technique with the sickle during the current harvest." After a moment, he turns back to the priest. "Thomas will go. He has a steady hand and works carefully." Father Matthew nods approval. "Good. The work begins at first light. At the river field, the steward will direct operations." He departs shortly afterward, continuing his rounds to other households with the same message. Being selected for this special harvest carries both honour and burden. The experimental wheat field represents Lord Geoffrey's interest in agricultural innovation, a small plot planted with new seed obtained at considerable expense from a merchant with continental connections. Its success or failure could influence future planting decisions for the entire manor. "You must take particular care tomorrow," your father advises as you check your sickle one final time before sleep. "This wheat is precious to the Lord. Cut clean and low and handle the sheaves gently." "I will," you promise, understanding the responsibility being placed on you. "Should I take our best sickle?" He nods, handing you the tool with the newest blade, a valuable item in your household's limited collection of metal implements. "Sharpen it again in the morning before you leave." That night, your sleep is lighter than usual, your mind processing the day's events and preparing for tomorrow's special task. Dreams come in fragments, fields of golden grain, John Cooper's cryptic invitation, the stranger with Lord Pembroke's badge, Walter's furtive behaviour. All these elements swirl together, creating a sense of standing at some undefined crossroads where decisions yet unmade will shape the path ahead. Dawn arrives with clear skies, favourable weather for the special harvest. You rise quietly, careful not to disturb your still sleeping brothers, and sharpen the sickle as instructed. The blade gleams in the early light as you test its edge with careful fingers, finding it satisfyingly keen. Breakfast is solitary, a piece of bread and a small cup of ale, before you set out for the river field. The morning air feels crisp against your face, carrying the particular scent that marks the transition from summer to early autumn. Though the sun still holds warmth, there's a subtle change in quality, a reminder that the season is turning inexorably toward harvest's end and the preparations for winter that will follow. As you walk the path beside the meandering river, your mind turns again to John Cooper's invitation and what it might signify. Could it relate to Emma, to some opportunity for work or advancement? The possibilities are both exciting and slightly intimidating, representing potential changes to the stable pattern of your existence. The river field comes into view around a bend in the path, a modest plot of land reclaimed from what was once scrubby woodland, and there, standing at its edge directing the gathering workers, is Walter the steward, his face set in its usual stern lines. Whatever mysterious activities have occupied him recently, today he is simply performing his official duties, organising the special harvest that will determine the success of Lord Geoffrey's agricultural experiment. As you take your place among the selected reapers, the familiar rhythm of harvest work beckons once more. The weight of the sickle in your hand, the golden grain waiting to be cut, the community of labourers united in purpose despite differences in status and circumstance. This is the enduring reality of your life as a serf in medieval England. Bound to the land and to the seasonal cycle of growth and harvest that has sustained humanity since time immemorial. The special wheat harvest begins with unusual ceremony. Walter gathers the selected workers in a semicircle at the field's edge, his voice more formal than usual as he explains the importance of the task. This wheat comes from seeds brought from lands far to the east, he tells the assembled harvesters. It ripens earlier and may yield more grain than our traditional varieties. Lord Geoffrey has invested considerable wealth in this experiment. The success or failure of today's harvest will determine whether these new seeds are planted more widely next spring. You study the standing wheat with fresh interest. To your eye, it appears similar to the familiar crops you've harvested before, golden stalks topped with seed heads nodding gently in the morning breeze. But apparently, this ordinary-looking grain represents something potentially valuable for the entire manor's future. Each reaper will take a section 10 paces wide, Walter continues, gesturing to the field. Cut carefully, close to the ground. We must save every grain for assessment. The steward assigns positions, placing you near the centre of the field where the wheat appears particularly thick and healthy. Pride mingles with nervousness as you realise you've been given one of the more important sections, a recognition of your demonstrated skill during the main harvest. As you take your place and prepare to begin cutting, you notice that Walter himself will be overseeing the work directly rather than delegating to the reeve as is usual. His attention seems especially focused on recording the yield, with a clerk from the manor house standing ready with parchment and quill to note the number of sheaves gathered from each section. The harvesting begins on Walter's signal, a dozen sickles flashing in the morning sun as they swing through the golden stalks. You concentrate fully on your technique, making each cut clean and precise. The familiar rhythm establishes itself quickly. Grasp, swing, cut, place, step forward and repeat. but you maintain greater care than usual, ensuring that no stalks are broken unnecessarily and no grain is lost to careless handling. The experimental wheat seems to cut differently than the barley and rye you've harvested in previous days. The stalks are somehow both stronger and more supple, requiring a slightly adjusted technique. You adapt quickly, finding the proper angle and pressure that yields the cleanest cut. Behind each reaper, a designated gatherer collects and binds the cut wheat into sheaves, which are then carefully counted and recorded by Walter and the clerk. The unusual level of documentation underscores the importance of this particular harvest to Lord Geoffrey's agricultural plans. As the morning progresses and the sun climbs higher, the distinctive rhythm of harvest work creates a sense of unity among the labourers. Despite their varied statuses in village society, free tenants like John Cooper work alongside serfs and even a few cottagers who own no land at all. In the fundamental task of gathering food, social distinctions temporarily recede, replaced by the shared purpose of securing the community's sustenance. During a brief water break, you overhear a conversation between Walter and the clerk that catches your attention. Lord Pembroke's man was most insistent, the clerk says quietly. The payment must be delivered before the wedding, not after as originally agreed. Walter's response is too low to hear clearly, but his expression shows clear displeasure. The clerk persists. The arrangement was clear from the beginning, half before, half after. Changing terms now risks. The steward cuts him off with a sharp gesture, suddenly aware of potential listeners nearby. His eyes scan the harvesters, briefly meeting yours before you carefully look away, focusing intently on adjusting the binding of your sickle as though it requires urgent attention. The mysterious exchange adds another piece to the puzzle of Walter's furtive behaviour and the repeated appearances of Lord Pembroke's representative. Some financial arrangement exists between the families beyond the normal dowry negotiations for a noble marriage, something requiring secret meetings and hidden payments that may now be causing tension. The implication feels dangerous, knowledge of matters far above your station that could bring unwelcome attention if Walter suspects you've overheard or understood too much. You return to your harvesting with renewed focus, deliberately avoiding any appearance of interest in the steward's activities. By midday, the special harvest is nearly complete, the experimental wheat field reduced to neat rows of stubble with carefully counted sheaves arranged for transport to the manor's threshing floor. The yield appears excellent to your experienced eye, full heads with plump grain that suggests Lord Geoffrey's investment may indeed prove worthwhile. Walter seems pleased as well, his stern countenance relaxing slightly as he reviews the tally with the clerk. Better than expected, you overhear him comment. The Lord will be satisfied with this result. As the final sheaves are loaded onto carts for transport, Walter addresses the harvesters once more. Lord Geoffrey recognises your careful work today, he announces. Each household represented will receive an extra loaf from the manor's bakehouse this evening and a jug of ale. This unexpected generosity, modest though it is, raises approving murmurs among the workers. Such tangible recognition of service is rare and therefore particularly appreciated. It suggests that the experimental wheat harvest has indeed been successful, perhaps exceeding Lord Geoffrey's expectations. With the special harvest complete before midday, you're directed to rejoin the main harvesting crew in the north field for the afternoon. The regular rhythm of the larger harvest resumes, though your arms and back already feel the strain of the morning's careful work. The day stretches long, the sun beating down as rye falls to the sickles in swath after swath. By the time the work ends at dusk, every muscle in your body aches with familiar harvest time weariness, but there's also satisfaction in the visible progress, field after field, transformed from standing grain to orderly stooks and filled barns. The fundamental work of securing food for the coming year advances steadily despite complications of weather and timing. The promised reward from Lord Geoffrey awaits when you return to the village, a fresh loaf of fine white bread made with flour from the manor's store rather than the coarser grain that forms your usual fare, and a clay jug of ale stronger and clearer than the homemade variety. These small luxuries make the evening meal particularly satisfying, a welcome recognition of your contribution to the special harvest. As your family gathers around the fire, enjoying the unexpected bounty, your father shares news heard during the afternoon's work. The main harvest should be complete in 3 more days if the weather holds, he reports, then a single day for the Lord's wedding celebration, and we can turn to our own strips. Will there be enough time before the rains come? Your mother asks, the practical concern of a farmer's wife who knows how quickly autumn weather can turn. Your father nods confidently. Our plots are small enough to manage quickly once we can give them full attention, and John Cooper has offered the use of his spare sickle for Will, so we'll have 3 cutting at once. This mention of John Cooper reminds you of the pending invitation to visit his cottage after the harvest. Do you think he'll still want to speak with us, given how busy everyone will be with their own harvesting, you ask? If John Cooper says he wishes to speak, he means it, your father answers. The man doesn't make idle invitations. The subject drops there, but remains present in the undercurrents of family conversation throughout the evening. Whatever John Cooper wishes to discuss, it clearly holds enough importance to occupy your parents' thoughts despite the pressing concerns of harvest time. The next 3 days pass in the relentless rhythm of harvest work, cutting, gathering, binding, stooking, carting. The weather remains favourable, with clear skies and moderate temperatures ideal for the task. Gradually, field after field falls to the harvester's sickles, Lord Geoffrey's crops secured for the coming year. Throughout this period, preparations for the wedding continue alongside the agricultural labour. Hunting parties bring in deer and boar from the forest to supplement the manor's stores of meat. The brewhouse works at full capacity, producing ale and beer in quantity sufficient for the anticipated festivities. Baking begins in the manor's kitchen, with loaves of fine white bread and pastries made with precious sugar and spices imported at great expense. On the final day of the main harvest, as the last sheaves are being loaded onto carts, Walter makes an announcement to the assembled workers. Lord Geoffrey extends his thanks for your diligent service, the steward declares. The harvest has been bountiful and the granaries are well filled. Tomorrow all are invited to attend the wedding celebration of Lady Eleanor to Sir William of Pembroke. Following the ceremony, in the church, there will be feasting on the village green with meat and ale provided by the Lord's generosity. This news is received with genuine enthusiasm, despite the exhaustion of harvest work. A noble wedding represents a rare opportunity for communal celebration and better food than most villagers see from one season to the next. Even those too tired to fully appreciate the prospect of dancing and games can look forward to the feast itself. That evening, as your family prepares for sleep, there's an air of anticipation that temporarily overshadows the bone-deep weariness of harvest labour. Your mother inspects your better tunic, making a few quick repairs to ensure it's suitable for the important occasion. Your younger siblings chatter excitedly about the promised treats and entertainments, their imaginations fired by stories of previous celebrations from older villagers. For your own part, thoughts of Emma Cooper and the potential significance of her father's invitation compete with curiosity about the wedding festivities. Tomorrow represents a pivotal day, not just for Lady Eleanor and her noble bridegroom, but perhaps for your own future as well. Sleep comes despite these thoughts. Your body's need for rest, overwhelming mental activity after days of intense physical labour. The darkness of the cottage, broken only by the dying embers of the fire, enfolds your family in its peaceful embrace. Wedding day dawns bright and clear, as though the weather itself acknowledges the importance of the occasion. The church bells begin ringing earlier than usual, calling the villagers not to work but to celebration. There's a different energy in the air, a collective release of tension after the crucial harvest period, combined with the special excitement of witnessing an event that will be remembered and discussed for years to come. Your family dresses in their best clothing, simple garments compared to what will be worn by the nobility, but clean and carefully maintained for such occasions. Your father wears a tunic of undyed wool that your mother woven herself, while she has added a colourful, embroidered band to the neckline of her own best dress. Your brothers have been scrubbed until their faces shine, and even little Mary wears a small flower crown that your mother wove from late-blooming daisies. The village green has been transformed overnight. Trestle tables stand in long rows, covered with cloths and set with wooden platters. A whole ox turns slowly on a spit over a great fire pit tended by the manor's cooks. Barrels of ale are positioned strategically, ready to be tapped when the feasting begins. Colourful banners hang from poles set around the area, displaying the heraldic symbols of both Lord Geoffrey's family and the Pembrokes. Your attention is caught by a flash of colour near the church. Emma Cooper walking with her family, wearing a dress of blue-dyed wool that makes her stand out among the mostly earth-toned garments of the villagers. A wreath of small flowers crowns her dark hair, and even from a distance you can see that she's wearing a necklace, perhaps a string of simple glass beads, a treasured possession for a young woman of her station. The church is too small to accommodate everyone for the ceremony itself. Lord Geoffrey's family and guests, along with the more prominent villagers, including the Coopers, will witness the exchange of vows inside the stone building. The remainder of the community, including your family, waits outside, crowding around the open doorway to catch glimpses of the proceedings. The bride arrives in a small procession from the manor house, Lady Eleanor resplendent in a gown of deep green silk embroidered with silver thread. Her long hair flows loose beneath a delicate circlet of silver, signifying her unmarried state for the last time. Beside her walks Lord Geoffrey, his usual practical attire replaced by fine clothing that befits his rank and the importance of the occasion. A murmur of appreciation passes through the gathered villagers. Though the lives of the nobility seem remote from daily concerns of serfs and peasants, there's genuine affection for Lady Eleanor, who has grown up in their midst and is known for her kindness during the previous winter's hardship when she personally distributed food from the manor's stores to the most vulnerable households. The ceremony proceeds with the formal language and rituals of the church, Latin phrases flowing from Father Matthew's lips in solemn intonation. Sir William of Pembroke, a young man perhaps 5 years older than his bride, responds appropriately to the priest's questions, his voice carrying clearly to those listening outside. Lady Eleanor's responses are softer but equally firm, accepting her new role and the alliance between families that her marriage represents. When the newly wedded couple emerges from the church, cheers erupt from the assembled villagers. Flower petals are tossed into the air, creating a momentary shower of colour that flutters down around the bride and groom as they process toward the manor house, where the noble guests will enjoy their own separate feast. For the common folk, the celebration now truly begins. The ox is carved with servants from the manor distributing portions to each household according to size and status. Bread, cheese and preserved fruits appear on the tables, along with the promised ale, which flows freely into cups and bowls brought by each family. Your own family finds places at one of the long tables, your father nodding greetings to neighbours and friends as everyone settles in to enjoy the feast. The food is simple by noble standards, but represents rare abundance for most villagers. Meat in quantity seldom seen, bread made from finer flour than usual, even small honey cakes distributed to the children as a special treat. As the meal progresses and ale loosens tongues and spirits, musicians begin to play, a group of travelling performers hired specifically for the occasion. A man with a pipe and tabor provides lively rhythms, while another plays a stringed instrument that produces both melody and harmony. The music draws people from the tables to an open area where dancing begins, starting with the more energetic young people and gradually expanding to include older villagers as well. You find yourself watching the dancers, particularly Emma Cooper, who moves with natural grace through the simple patterns of a circle dance. When she notices your attention, she smiles and makes a small gesture of invitation that prompts you to join the group despite your initial hesitation. The dance brings you together briefly, hands touching as you pass in the circular formation. "You worked well in the special harvest," Emma comments during this momentary connection. "Father noticed your careful cutting." "Thank you," you respond, pleased by this indirect compliment from John Cooper. "Your father is skilled with the sickle himself." Emma's smile deepens. He says the same of you. Before you can respond further, the dance pattern separates you again, but her words and expression linger pleasantly in your awareness. As the afternoon progresses, you notice Walter the steward engaged in what appears to be an intense discussion with Lord Pembroke's representative at the edge of the celebration. Their body language suggests disagreement, though both men maintain the outer appearance of civility, appropriate to the festive occasion. Eventually, they move away from the gathering, walking toward the manor house and out of sight. Your father, who has been observing the same interaction, catches your eye and gives a small shake of his head, a warning not to show obvious interest in matters that don't concern your station. You nod slightly in acknowledgement, turning your attention back to the celebration around you. The feast and dancing continue into the early evening, the atmosphere growing increasingly relaxed as ale flows and the day's warmth gives way to the cooler air of approaching dusk. Children run in excited groups between the tables, older villagers exchange news and gossip, and young people find opportunities for conversation and flirtation within the acceptable boundaries of community supervision. As the celebration begins to wind down, John Cooper approaches your father, speaking briefly before moving on to greet other neighbours. Your father nods in response to whatever was said, then turns to you. "John has invited us to his cottage tomorrow after midday," he says quietly. "Once the morning's work on our own strips is complete." "Did he say what he wishes to discuss?" you ask, curiosity rising once more. "No, but his manner was positive. We'll know soon enough." Your father's expression remains carefully neutral, though you sense an undercurrent of cautious optimism in his tone. The remainder of the evening passes in pleasant weariness, the combination of good food, ale, and social interaction creating a mellow mood throughout the community. By the time your family returns to your cottage, even the youngest children are ready for sleep, their excitement finally overcome by tiredness. You lie on your straw mattress, listening to the gentle breathing of your brothers, your mind reviewing the day's events, the wedding ceremony, the feast, the dancing with Emma, and most intriguingly, the confirmed invitation from John Cooper. These thoughts gradually dissolve into the deeper waters of sleep, your body surrendering to rest in preparation for tomorrow's continuation of the harvest cycle, this time focusing on your family's own small strips of land. Morning comes with the familiar pattern of awakening, eating a simple breakfast and preparing for field work, but there's a different quality to the day, the satisfaction of turning attention to your family's own crops after fulfilling obligations to the manor, combined with anticipation of the afternoon's mysterious meeting with John Cooper. The work on your strips proceeds efficiently, 3 sickles moving in coordinated rhythm as you, your father, and Will, wielding John Cooper's borrowed tool, cut the ripened barley. Your mother and younger siblings follow behind, gathering and binding the sheaves. The area is small compared to the manor's great fields, just enough to supplement the portion you receive for your labour service and help carry the family through the winter months. By midday, nearly half the crop has been cut, a satisfying achievement that allows for the planned visit to the Cooper household without compromising the harvest schedule. Your father checks the position of the sun, then nods decisively. "Time to clean ourselves up a bit," he says. "We don't want to appear before John Cooper looking like we've been rolling in the fields, even if that's precisely what we've been doing." This small joke, rare from your usually serious father, indicates his good mood, despite the uncertainty of the upcoming meeting. You both wash hands and faces at the rain barrel behind your cottage and change into relatively clean tunics kept for such occasions. The Cooper home stands apart from the cluster of serf cottages located on the other side of the village green near the smithy. It's larger than your family's dwelling, with a proper wooden floor rather than packed earth and glass in one of its windows, a significant luxury that reflects the family's status as free tenants rather than bound serfs. John Cooper greets you at the door with formal courtesy, inviting you into the main room where Emma and her mother are seated at a table covered with a clean cloth. A small jug and cups have been set out, another indication that this meeting holds importance beyond ordinary social interaction. "Please, sit," John invites, gesturing to stools placed across from his wife and daughter. As you and your father take the offered seats, Emma offers a small smile of greeting, though her expression suggests she's as curious about the purpose of this gathering as you are. John pours a dark liquid from the jug into the cups. Not ale, but something else, perhaps the cider that the Cooper family is known to make particularly well. Once everyone has been served, he settles onto his own stool and clears his throat slightly. "Thomas has shown himself to be a young man of good character and considerable skill," he begins, addressing your father but glancing briefly in your direction. "His work during the harvest demonstrated care and diligence beyond his years." Your father nods acknowledgement of the compliment but remains silent, waiting for John to continue. "As you know, I've been considering taking on an apprentice for some time," John continues, "someone to learn the trade of wheel making alongside my work as a tenant farmer." This revelation causes a small surge of excitement within you. John Cooper's skill in crafting wheels for carts and wagons is well known in the area, providing him with income beyond what his farming produces. The ability to make and repair wheels represents a valuable trade, one that could potentially offer a pathway to greater prosperity and perhaps even freedom from the bonds of serfdom. "I believe Thomas has the aptitude and character for such training," John states directly. "With your permission, I would like to offer him apprenticeship beginning after Michaelmas." The proposal hangs in the air for a moment, its significance expanding to fill the room. This is no small matter being discussed. It represents a potential transformation of your life's path, an opportunity rarely available to someone of your birth and status. Your father considers carefully before responding. "This is a generous offer, John, and one that honours our family. But I must ask, what terms do you propose for this apprenticeship?" The question addresses the practical reality that underlies the opportunity. Apprenticeships typically involve specific arrangements regarding duration, living arrangements, and eventual compensation. 3 years of training, John replies promptly, having clearly thought through his proposal. "Thomas would continue to live with your family, but work with me 3 days each week. He would still be available to help with your land and fulfill his obligations to the manor. In exchange for his labour and assistance in my workshop, I will teach him the craft completely, holding nothing back." "And after the 3 years?" your father asks. "If he proves capable, as I believe he will, Thomas would be free to practice the trade himself, with my blessing and support in establishing his own work." John glances at you directly. A skilled wheelwright can command good payment for his services, enough to eventually purchase freedom from serfdom should that be desired. This last statement brings the full significance of the offer into sharp focus. John Cooper is not merely proposing to teach you a craft, he's offering a potential path to changing your fundamental status in society, from bound serf to free craftsman. It's an opportunity that comes to very few in your position, one that could alter not just your own future, but potentially that of your entire family. Your father's expression remains carefully controlled, but you can see the impact of John's words in the slight straightening of his posture and the momentary tightening of his hands on his knees. "This is a matter that requires family discussion," he says finally, "but speaking for myself, I'm inclined to accept with gratitude, provided Thomas himself wishes it." All eyes turn to you, waiting for your response. The moment feels weighty with possibility and change. You glance briefly at Emma, whose encouraging smile suggests she already knew of her father's intentions and approves of them. "I would be honoured to learn from you, sir," you say to John, your voice steady despite the emotion behind the words. "And I would work hard to prove worthy of the opportunity." John nods, satisfaction evident in his expression. "Good, then we shall consider it settled, pending your family's final decision." He raises his cup slightly. "To new beginnings, God willing." The conversation shifts to more specific details, when the apprenticeship would begin exactly, what initial tasks would be involved, how the schedule would be arranged around existing obligations. Throughout the discussion, you're aware of Emma's presence across the table, her occasional contributions to the conversation offering glimpses of intelligence and practical knowledge that complement her father's expertise. As the meeting concludes and you prepare to leave, John mentions one additional point. "Lord Geoffrey has approved this arrangement should you accept it. I spoke with him before the wedding." This information adds another dimension to the offer. For a serf to take on training or work beyond the manor's immediate needs requires the Lord's permission. That John has already secured this approval demonstrates both his respect for proper procedure and his serious intention regarding the apprenticeship. Walking home with your father, you both maintain thoughtful silence for some distance, each processing the significance of what has been proposed. Finally, your father speaks. "This is a rare opportunity, Thomas, one that could change much for you and perhaps for our family in time." "I understand," you respond. "Do you think Mother will approve?" A small smile touches your father's lips. Your mother has suspected something of this nature might be coming. "The Coopers have shown particular interest in you these past months. I believe she will be well pleased." The conversation turns to practical considerations, how your new responsibilities would be balanced with existing ones, what the apprenticeship might eventually mean for your prospects, the possibilities that might open if you prove skilled at the craft. By the time you reach your cottage, where your mother waits with barely concealed curiosity, a sense of excitement has begun to replace the initial shock of the offer. Your father explains the proposal while your mother listens intently, her expression shifting from surprise to thoughtful consideration to evident pleasure. "John Cooper is a good man who deals fairly," she says when your father has finished, "and Emma will make a fine wife someday for a man with a respectable trade." This direct reference to the unspoken aspect of the arrangement, the potential for an eventual match between you and Emma, brings heat to your face, but also a flutter of possibility in your chest. While nothing has been explicitly stated regarding marriage, the Cooper's interest in your character and future suggests they may be considering you as a potential son-in-law, assuming the apprenticeship proves successful. The family discussion continues through the evening meal, with even your younger siblings contributing questions and comments about what your new role might entail. The prevailing mood is one of cautious optimism, recognition of the significant opportunity being offered, tempered by awareness that much hard work and many challenges lie ahead before its full potential might be realised. That night, as you lie on your familiar straw mattress, perhaps for one of the last times as simply a serf rather than an apprentice wheelwright, your mind fills with images of possible futures, working wood with skilled hands, earning respect for craftsmanship, perhaps eventually establishing a household of your own, with Emma Cooper as its mistress. These pleasant visions carry you towards sleep, the immediate concerns of harvest and manor obligations temporarily overshadowed by longer-term possibilities. Your breathing slows, your body relaxes, and gradually consciousness gives way to dreams filled with turning wheels and paths leading toward horizons yet unexplored. In many ways, your life as a medieval serf has been defined by limitations, the boundaries of the manor, the obligations to lord and land, the narrow options available to someone of your birth and status. Yet within those constraints, human ingenuity, determination and connection have created spaces for growth, opportunity and meaning. The rhythms that have shaped your days, the cycle of seasons, the pattern of religious observances, the progression from sowing to harvest will continue to influence your existence even as you begin the journey toward a new identity as craftsman rather than solely agricultural labourer. The fundamental relationships that have sustained you, family bonds, community ties, the reciprocal obligations between different social levels will remain important even as your place within them potentially shifts. As sleep claims you completely, your individual story merges with the broader narrative of medieval life, a tapestry of hardship and simple joys, of rigid social structures and personal connections that sometimes transcend them, of limited horizons and unexpected opportunities. Your experience as a young serf at this pivotal moment echoes countless similar lives lived centuries ago, each unique in its particulars yet sharing the universal human quest for security, purpose, and connection. The medieval world, for all its differences from our own, contained the same essential human elements: work and rest, struggle and celebration, constraint and possibility. In understanding the texture of daily life in that distant time, we glimpse not only the differences that separate us from our ancestors, but also the commonalities that bind us to them across the centuries. As darkness enfolds the sleeping village, the stars wheel slowly overhead, marking the passage of time in rhythms that would be familiar to eyes from any era. Tomorrow will bring another day of harvest work, the next step in the ancient cycle of growth and gathering that has sustained humanity since we first learned to cultivate the earth. And for you, it will bring the continuation of a personal journey that, while shaped by the specific conditions of medieval serfdom, reflects the universal human experience of finding one's path within the circumstances life provides. Sleep now and dream of wheels turning toward new horizons.